right, everybody, welcome to episode 28 of the Comedically Hardheaded podcast. So where I left off, I am now living back in the DMV. So after the Howard University years, I moved back home, was unemployed, boom, got me a new job, moved back to the DMV, all is well. Whoa, I'm the director of a community center, and things are not quite what I expected, but I want to still kind of ride this out because I feel like I can do something great. And there was a coworker that got on my nerves. The coworker is now gone, and in comes Ava, my new coworker, and we're trying to find our footing with this center as we're trying to make it become great. So let's just jump right into it. One of the crazy things that used to always happen every week is Boss Lady used to make us have what you would call a regional meeting every Tuesday, and eventually she moved it to Fridays because she wanted to include Ava in the meetings, because remember, Ava was still in college, and so Ava was only available Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesdays and Thursdays she had class all day, and so we'd always have these meetings at the basement location, and she always just called it, I think she just called it the Fairfax Council or something like that. So anyway, these meetings would be off the chain because every meeting was a fight. All right. And remember, like I said, I talked about the other staff members from the basement location. And so, there was Alex, who was really, really cool. There was Greg, who was all right. There was Dawn, who she had too much attitude for my liking, to be real honest. Carrie, who was real cool, but Carrie technically didn't work at the basement location. She was Boss Lady's assistant. So she kind of floated wherever you needed her. And then you also had John. John actually worked at the Herndon location, but he would still have to come to this meeting as well. And then there was Jones, who also worked at the basement location. And every meeting, there was drama, every single time. And I remember one of the big fights, Boss Lady started doing this thing where she would have a master calendar and a checklist on this Excel sheet that she would, put on the big screen. And so she'd give everybody all of these different tasks. And if you completed the task, your box was green. If you were still working on a task, your box was yellow. Now, you'd think the box would just be red if you didn't do it, but oh no. Instead of it saying red, it was a big red box with the big black letters, fail, in it. And it would be so funny because, everybody would get mad if you had something that failed, because it's like, why are you shaming us in front of everybody? And the problem was, John used to never do any work. We don't know what John did. Can I tell you how privilege works? And this is not to fry up John, because John was a nice person, but First of all, John never even finished high school, okay? John's parents worked for NASA. John came from money. John decided when he was like 16 or 17, he didn't want to go to school anymore, so he just stopped going. But he was actually really, really smart. So he went and he took the GED test, and then that was his life. And, he ended up becoming a director of a center. And I found it so interesting because I was like, y'all didn't even want to give Ava $11 to be part-time because y'all were claiming she didn't have a degree. And then here's John, who doesn't have a degree, and he's the director of an entire center. And last time I checked, not to get into anybody's business, you needed to have a degree to be a director of one of these centers for various reasons. But I'm going to mind my black business and leave this one alone. And so John used to never do any work. And so John, when you look at his name, John had about 5 or 6 fails on there. And then so John would get red every time, get pissed off, and yell at everybody like it was something we did wrong. And I'm like, I don't know who he yelling at because he didn't do his part. Like, relax, John. And so those meetings used to be off the chain. And then for some reason, Dawn did not like Ava. Right? Like, Dawn could not stand Ava. And Ava didn't do nothing to the girl. The problem was, Dawn was mad because Ava was only available Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, which meant on Tuesdays and Thursdays, somebody from that location was going to have to come to my center. And like I said, a lot of them were not excited about coming to my center because my center had the bad reputation. I had the bad kids. My kids were not bad. They just needed something to do. And again, I've described to you what that center looked like. So I would act that way as well if my center looked like that. And so I was always like, don't y'all be trying to talk about my kids. They're going to be great. Like, give them a minute, because, the basement location was a bigger location, had everything, had multiple rooms. They had rooms where you could break the kids up by age group, and they got all the investment. They got all the money. Like I said, we didn't even get money. Our stuff was trickled in, trickled down economics that we were literally living in. And so I was like, y'all not about to keep coming after us. And so Don always had smoke for Ava. All right. And so the weirdest thing is we'd have these meetings, everybody would argue and fight because Boss Lady was always coming up with something new for us to do. Like, our plates were all full. Everybody was overworked, stretched thin, and somehow we're supposed to have energy for the kids. And then, they want to add more stuff. And at least by this time, I had finally got my car. My car had finally been shipped there, so, at least I can finally drive, because I would have to take Ava to our meetings because the car that she had was a car, but it wasn't reliable enough to get to some of these locations. And so, we'd always carpool together, so we'd always leave the meeting talking trash and everything. But Boss Lady always had us doing some dumb stuff, always some dumb stuff. And I remember, like, one time she brought in the yoga instructor to the centers, which was cool, but she brought it on, like, the worst day. And it was a yoga instructor that had to do yoga outside. And I'm like, Boss Lady, it's January, it's cold, and well, your bodies are gonna warm up when they start. I'm like, I'm not about to have people's kids out in the cold on mats in the grass in January. Like, what y'all doing? Like, Boss Lady always had us doing some crazy things. But one of the craziest things that I thought was hilarious is when she brought the people that were gonna do the cooking classes. One thing I'll say about when you have a community center, you always get people who think they know more than you. You always get people who think that they can help you help other people. They always assume that you're just too dumb, and that because they said so, or because they think that they're God's gift to man, they have all the answers. And so I'm still in this stage where I'm learning how to work with kids in the capacity that I had. But I also, at this point, I kind of knew the kids well. I knew what would work with them and what would not. And they brought in this lady was gonna be the cooking lady, Miss Ellen, all right? And so Ellen was cool, but she was this young, I think she might have been 23 years old, really, really young. And I remember when she first came, like she came from the little health company nearby or something like that. So she's gonna do healthy cooking for the kids. And I just also was a little annoyed because there was always this assumption that all of a sudden, because of where my kids come from, they wouldn't know how to cook healthy. So I'm like, why is it that only my center's getting the healthy cooking class? Why aren't I giving it to the other kids? Like, my kids already eat pretty healthy, but whatever. And so I have a conversation with Ellen, and I'm like, hey, so, these are the best practices in order to work with these groups. And Ellen wouldn't let me get anything. Oh, no, I got it. No, this is great. I work with children. This is going to be really great. I have an entire catalog and a program of how we're going to do things. And we're just going to get in there. We're going to get dirty, and we're going to just have a great time. Okay. All right. You say so. Look, I ain't going to fight you since you know everything. We going to find out. When I tell you, them kids drove Ellen crazy. I remember, because Ava was like, should I go out there? Ava, we going to be in this lab. We're going to let Ellen go in there and do what she claims she knows how to do. So Ellen went in there with her cooking book and catalog, and so she has all of the elementary kids. We had the middle and high school with us in the lab, and so she has all these little kids, right? And mind you, at this point, the club has also been changing. Me and Ava have cleaned that place up. We've been throwing out all the stuff that was junky. We now have that third room. We got a bit more room in there, right? We've gotten a few new games. Every time we got some money on the Costco card, we'd buy something new for the club. So the club is slowly getting better. It still needs a lot of work, but it's getting better. So anyway, we're in the lab. Ava's in there, and I heard her try to do the nice, warm, oh no, that's not what we're doing. All eyes on me. Everybody freeze, macaroni and cheese, like all kind of things that they be doing, thinking they know how kids operate. Them kids were not listening. 20 minutes later, Ellen was over there screaming, I said everyone has to stop talking. You will not be able to make the kale chips if everyone is talking. And it was so funny because all they were making was kale chips. And I'm like, I don't know why y'all over here acting like this is elaborate. All you had to do was get some kale, spread some olive oil, put a little salt, put it in the oven, they dry up, and boom, yum yum, kale chips, okay? But anyway, Ellen swore that this was some chicken cordon bleu type stuff. And so I'm sitting here enjoying watching Ellen go through it. And I go in there one time like, Miss Ellen, you good? Oh, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm great. I mean, she was looking frantic. The hair was starting to get frizzy. Whole face red, neck red, arms red. I'm like, Ellen is in there going through it. And mind you, the thing about kids, even though kids can be very rambunctious and have a lot of energy, once you're used to them, you're used to how they act. So even when they're at their worst, you're unfazed because you've just found ways to work with them. Ellen didn't have that. And I was trying to nicely explain that to her, but she knew everything. So Ellen would come once a week, I think on Wednesdays, to cook, and that lady would almost be in tears every day. And every single time I would offer her help with how to work with the groups. So, well, these are the kids oh no, I want everybody. Okay, because I used to try to filter out and say okay, well, this one don't need to be in there because he's about to do cartwheel. Oh no, so she was in there going through it. And I think this was for her practicum. I think she was in a master's program or something, and she needed to have the hands-on experience. And so I'm like, all right. So yeah, Boss Lady always had us doing stuff. Then one time, she had the boxing instructor come, which I thought was fun, but I was like, don't know how this is going to work. So the boxing instructor comes, they got boxing in the backyard. It's cool. The kids have a great time. The only problem is once the boxing instructor left, because he was only coming for that one day, every kid thought they were a Power Ranger for the rest of the week. And they're swinging, and now they're using the new skills that they've learned from the boxing man on each other. So we have a lot of kids that are getting punched in the face. And so, you had parents calling. And I think one of the other things that used to always suck, Boss Lady said yes to every partnership. The thing about working in the nonprofit world is, yes, you need partnerships to make things work. You got to build relationships. You're going to have to connect. A lot of times, if you can do something for somebody else, they'll do something for you, vice versa. And so one of our partners was Capital One Bank. Great partnership at the time. But their ideas and the programs they wanted to do would be so dry. And I remember one time I had to work on a Saturday. I was so pissed because a lot of times you'd end up doing stuff on Saturday and Sunday. We did not get overtime, but Boss Lady always had something planned for the weekend. And it used to piss me off because it's like, dang, man, how do you got me coming to work and I'm not getting paid for it? And Boss Lady be like, well, your salary. I'm like, yeah, but my salary ain't that high to be coming in on Saturday and Sunday, and then I gotta have the energy to do this again on Monday. Man, get out of here. One time I worked 22 days straight because there was always something going on, some kind of event. Hot. Pissed off. It's also one of the downsides when you have a community center but not a large staff. It was literally just me and Ava at the time, so we'd have to any, mini, miny, mo for a lot of stuff. And one of the rules, a part-time staff at the time was not allowed to be, by themselves. They'd always have to have somebody full-time that was there, so she could never take kids on a field trip by herself at that time. And so it was all over the place. But anyway, one time we did this event with Capital One Bank, and it was at the Falls Church location. The people from Capital One came to their club and did a presentation, and I could have stabbed somebody. Okay, they got these two 18 or 19-year-old kids, fresh out of high school. They're doing a presentation on derivatives. Mind you, the kids are between the ages of 7 and 12. Why are we talking about derivatives? Why are we talking about interest? Why are we talking about loan? These are not things that kids would know yet. Like, I can understand if they did the conversation of needs and wants, the kind of things they kind of teach kids about, in regards to financial literacy. But like, this presentation was something for adults, and it was so boring and so dry. And it was just my luck Alan was on this field trip. And if you remember from the last episode, I said Alan was the kid that never showed up for homework, never showed up for anything of substance, but he would always find a way to try to come when it was time for a field trip or time for a snack. And like I said, I'm never going to call a kid bad on this podcast. I always just say that the kid needed something to do. Alan was a kid that always needed something to do to the 10th power, like to the 50th power, okay? And so we're sitting there at this boring presentation, and I'm listening to these two monotone presenters. And so, yeah, the derivatives, this would correlate with, a non-correlating account that would be tied with the stock market. And so when you guys get old enough to have your own bank accounts and, your own IRAs or Roth accounts, then that would be something you'd look into. Do any of you know if your parents have an IRA? I'm like, what the And so I'm already there. Alan is, Mr. Michael, I thought you said we were going to have pizza at the end of this. What? When is this going to be over? Are we going to go back soon? And I'm like, Alan, just stand here and enjoy this little boring presentation, please. I'm sitting through the same thing you're sitting through as well. And so, because once one kid starts cutting up, then they all cut up. And now everybody's moving. Everybody got to go to the bathroom. Clarissa, who wasn't even old enough to go on this trip because she was only in first grade and it was supposed to be second grade and up, she done found her way on the trip. What time are we leaving from the field trip? Because I told my friend I was going to meet her at the playground. Clarissa, this is not... All right, listen, we're here. Ain't nobody going nowhere, okay? All right, I'm ready to go too. It's my Saturday, but please sit here and enjoy this dry presentation, please. And I was like, you guys are killing me with this. And so I used to always be the person that was like, how about you let the people at the actual sites come up with things and we'll tell you what works and then go from there. And Boss Lady, she's like, oh no, because you guys don't understand how partnerships work. Meanwhile, we're starting to do all of these really great things on our own without Boss Lady. One of the dopest things Ava did. So, like I said, I had a lot of kids at my center, a lot of kids that were Black American, kids that were from the Caribbean, and kids that were from West Africa. And of course, there was the issue of colorism that a lot of kids had to deal with, being in that area and hearing certain things. One of the dopest things Ava did, because Ava knew somebody that knew Miss Ghana 2011. And so we actually had Miss Ghana 2011 come to the center one day and hang out with like the teenage girls, and they did this whole self-esteem thing, and she let them wear her, what's the sash thing, and they were doing the model walks and ripping and running. It was like the dopest thing ever. And I'm like, this was more impactful than the boxing man and the cooking lady and the bank derivatives crew. And that's some stuff that Ava pulled, on her own. That had nothing to do with these partnerships you got, Boss Lady. So after that moment, I never looked at Boss Lady the same again. And I was like, okay, I feel like Ava and I could do this thing on our own. Like, yeah, we work here, but we're not going to get a lot of support from Boss Lady because Boss Lady's she's a little distant and she's just not realistic. And it used to piss me off because sometimes I used to wish that we were one of the DC clubs, because the DC clubs had all the good stuff. Like, they had the big clubs, they had the staff of 20, and culturally everybody understood the needs for that club. People couldn't quite understand the need for my center, and there was an assumption that because my center was in Fairfax County that my kids were rich, and they were not. My kids were in the poor pockets of Fairfax County and had nothing, but because the county was wealthy, they could benefit from things like, really good schools because the property taxes paid for it, but they didn't have access to a lot of stuff, and so it used to piss me off. But anyway, one day there was this bird. I don't even know how this happened. I was at work doing my thing. I see this commotion at the playground. These kids are like running and like trying to stomp, and I'm like, what are they out there doing? Let me go out here and see. Somebody had a pet cockatoo, and I guess the pet bird got out, right? Pet bird is flying and fighting for his life because the kids want to step on the bird, right? I end up catching the bird somehow, and I put it in this box, and I keep it. And I'm like, okay, I put a notice out to the rental office, like, hey, somebody's pet bird is here. One of these little white and yellow birds. It's somebody's pet, because I see the little thing on its foot. And so, we put the signs up and everything. Nobody ever came to claim this bird. So the bird lived in the center for like a week and a half. And so I remember I went to PetSmart. I got the bird a cage, got the bird some food, and I didn't know what to do. I'd never had a bird before. I remember I was putting on YouTube videos of other cockatoos just, and I just hit play, and I'm like, well, here, talk to your friends. And so, the bird would be talking back to the computer. I'm like, okay, well, I guess he's good. And so, I ended up naming the bird Janet. Just don't judge. I was just being silly. I was joking, but then it ended up really being the bird's name. And so everybody wanted this bird. Like, all the kids at the club wanted the bird, because I wasn't going to keep it at the club because I didn't like the idea of leaving it at the club overnight, because birds are social. Like, they need to be around people all the time. So we were trying to find a family for the bird. And so I had told the kids, at this point, nobody's claimed the bird. It's been like a week and a half. I'm going to give the bird to a family that wants it, but only if I have a conversation with the parents first. Because I knew if the kids were like, yeah, my mom said I could have it, that bird would be in the parking lot somewhere 2 hours later, ran over with a bike. So I was like, I need to make sure that there's a parent or somebody. And so Regina, remember that really responsible teenager I told you about in the last episode? She's a 9th grader. Her mom came and was like, oh my God, Mr. Michael, I would love if we could have this bird. And like, she already was a bird person because they already had a bird. They had I don't know what the other kind of bird was. It was a smaller bird, but they were like, oh yeah, I'd love to come and take the bird. So she came and she looked at the bird and she's like, oh, it's a girl. I'm like, oh yeah, it's a girl. I didn't even know if it was a boy or a girl. I just called the bird Janet just to call the bird Janet. And so, yeah, it's a girl and something. And this is the kind of bird that can talk if you work with it long enough and blah, 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 blah. And so I was like, well, listen, if you and little Regina want to take it, y'all can take it right now, because the bird wasn't really too crazy over me. Like, I was trying to bond with the bird, but every time I put my fingers by the cage, that thing was nipping. I'm like, dang. Okay, that's the first animal that I've run into that didn't like me. Most animals usually like me. Like, everybody's pets love me. Anybody can tell you, if I go to your house and you got a pet, your pet is going to be glued to me until I leave. Like, so I was shocked that Janet was tripping. Maybe Janet didn't like their name, but whatever. And so, they went ahead and they took little Janet. And so one of the funniest days, oh my God, I forgot to tell you, there was this one day that Monica and Tierra got in a fight. Now remember, Tierra is the one that used to do Willow's hair. Again, if you aren't familiar with any of these names, or you didn't listen to the previous episode, please go back and listen to the previous episode so you can understand who is who. But anyway, remember, Tierra is the one that used to do Willow's hair, and Monica was the bully of the neighborhood. So Monica, like I said, she was grown, always got some mess going on. You'd have to really kind of work with her because she had just been around too many adults, seen too much, heard too much. repeated too much. And the thing with Monica was Monica and Ava already had a relationship because they lived in the same building. Like, Ava still lived in the neighborhood at the time with her mom and had grew up in the neighborhood and used to actually even babysit Monica when she was a toddler, so they knew each other. But again, like I said, Monica was grown, always in some mess. And so something had happened one day and Ava had to put her foot down and regulate. And so Monica's response was, I'll slap you, to Ava, I'll slap you. And so Ava came to me because she was like, listen, before I respond, I want you to, do your director thing, because if it's up to me, she's out of here for like the rest of the year. I'm not about to tolerate no disrespect and everything. And so, I go and I'm like, Monica, what happened? Because she ain't gonna be talking to me like that. I don't know who I ain't scared. Whoa. Relax. Where do you think you at, and who do you think you're talking about, and who you think you're talking to? Like, hold on a minute, okay? Because I try to give the kids a space to express themselves, but we just not about to do anything all in the name of trying to see through the other lens. Like, you're gonna have to still come with a little bit of poise at some point. And so she just had all this attitude. I'm like, Monica, you can't tell adults that you're gonna slap them, and that's not how we do things here. And the fact that you'd be bold enough to say that in front of everyone, now everyone else will think that's okay. So now I have to send you home for a few days, because if I don't make this example out of how you've just behaved and shown yourself, then the other kids are going to think that's okay. And on top of that, Ava had a harder time, in regards to getting certain things done with the kids because she wasn't there every day. So when it came to like the bonding and the relationships, it was there with her, but because she wasn't there Tuesdays and Thursdays, the kids at that moment didn't look at her the same way they looked at me. Even though they knew her much better, they knew I was the one in charge. They really weren't paying her that kind of attention yet. Now that would change because she'd really start regulating and shaking things up over time. And so, Monica got an attitude of me. So, Monica, I'm not doing this with you every day. So Monica, why don't you do this? Just go home and cool off. And, I'll deal with you tomorrow. So next thing you know, here come her mama. Like I told you, her mama just is off the chain as her. I need to speak to the director. It's me right here. I want to know why you done kicked my effing daughter out the effing mother program. Oh, God, not one of these. Let me talk to you in the kitchen. No, you can talk to me right here. No, we're going to talk into the kitchen because this is not going to be the conversation we're going to have in front of the kids. And so she comes to the kitchen. She got Monica with her. Monica's looking like I'm supposed to be scared of her mom or something. Like all of a sudden she was going to be able to come back that same day. Now it's like, oh, now you really ain't coming back for like a few days. Play around if you want to. So we're in the kitchen and I'm explaining to her mother what her daughter has just done. Well, listen, Monica, I think she's a great kid, blah, 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 blah. However, we have to work on how she addresses people and what's appropriate. We have a whole code of conduct. The kids are not allowed to use inappropriate language. They're not allowed to disrespect each other or the staff members. And she broke about 3 or 4 of them rules in the same minute. And I said exactly what she did and how she did it and how she done cussed out the person and even what she said to me afterwards. And then I could tell that this is one of those situations where the parent really, doesn't really parent their child, but then pretends and does the over performative thing to make it look like they're the good parent. And so, oh, hell no. Monica, no, I don't play that because I'll slap her in the face right now. No, you don't got to slap her in the face in front of me. Please don't, because I'm a mandated reporter. I don't want to be a part of that. And so, I don't play that. You know what? I apologize, Mr. Michael. She gonna go home right now because she done effed up. She ain't got to worry about doing else. I'm like, dang. Sometimes I used to feel bad. We used to not really by the time we got through the first or second year, we pretty much didn't even call the parents no more because some of these parents were just so off the chain. I'm like, y'all are better off being here with us. So some of you kids, I hope y'all understand what kind of parents y'all got. And once we kind of had that understanding, a lot of kids understood that, okay, it's best if they kind of just do what Mr. Michael and Miss Ava say because they mean well. And, we'd rather deal with them than deal with some of our overbearing parents. And so, Miss Monica's mama goes and she done did all this performative stuff and I don't play that and yada yada yada. And the other thing was this. She at first was trying to tell me about myself, but what she didn't remember is I actually paid for Monica's membership that year. Like, membership at the time was $25 a year. And I remember when she came crying about how her mama didn't have the money, so I just went ahead and paid for her membership out of pocket so she could come. So I was already like, listen, you not about to just come here cussing me out, and I'm already the one that paid for the girl's membership. And, $25 is nothing for me. I can give that to you right now. And I'm looking like, okay, go ahead and give it to me, because they ain't paying me nothing at this job, no way. She ain't never give me that $25. But anyway, So Monica's mom leaves, and this is how I knew that her mom was just real performative and was just putting on a show for me. Monica was still outside playing. I was confused because I knew that had, the school ever called my mom or my dad and said, hey, your son cussed out the teacher and said he would punch the teacher in the back of the face, there just wasn't going to be any outside. I was going to be home forever. And so I'm watching Monica outside playing, and so Monica's outside talking trash. Man, F Mr. Michael, F Miss Ava, F both of them. They got me effed up. I ain't scared of nobody. Ain't nobody about to tell me nothing. I ain't no punk. My mama didn't even do nothing. And so the kids are outside, and I just remember Ashley and Tierra were on that park bench out front. And at this point, the center had pretty much closed. We were winding down for the day. At this point, it's just me and Ava in the center. And we're doing that last minute cleanup before we go. But we can hear the full conversation from the park bench in front of the door. Because again, the front entrance is a glass door, and there's two windows, on both sides. So you can hear everything from outside. So Monica's just cussing us out. I'm like, Ava, you hear her? She in there running her mouth. And so we can just hear the full situation. And so we see Tierra and Ashley. And Ashley's like, remember, Ashley's that really, really smart girl. That was the girl that was Darlene's favorite. That's Clarissa's oldest sister and the oldest sister to Willow. And then there's Tierra. Tierra is the best friend that also does Willow's hair for Ashley's family. And so Ashley's like, why are you saying all that? You weren't saying all that just now when you were in there with your mom. And and Monica's like, you can mind your business too, or you'll get slapped too. Next thing you know, Tierra gets up. Now Tierra, because first of all, Ashley doesn't fight. Ashley is not a fighter either, but Tierra is. And Tierra been waiting for this moment. And it was so crazy because me and Miss Ava, we're standing right there watching through the glass, watching this whole thing unfold. And we know what's about to happen, all right? And remember, Monica's only in 3rd grade. Tierra is in 5th or 6th grade, but Monica is bigger than Tierra. Monica, like I said, looks like she could be in about 8th grade. And so Monica's like, are you sitting here running your mouth? You want to get popped too? What you want to do? What you want to do? Out of nowhere, little Tierra just jumps up, whack, right she popped that girl in the face so fast. I was like, oh shoot. And Ava was like, oh my God, let's go out there. I was like, wait, hold on one more second. Let Tierra get one more hit in first. And so, Tierra gets that second hit in, and then Monica had fell back, and Monica was getting up. And we knew when Monica got up, it was going to be over for Tierra. The way we ran out there so quick, and hey, break it up. Whoa, no. And it was so petty because, I was in the wrong 100%. Miss Ava was in the right. She didn't want anybody fighting. But for me, I was like, you know what? Somebody needs to get Monica just one good time because I'm tired of her punking all these kids in the neighborhood. And Tierra was the one to do it. So Tierra got 2 licks in, bop, bop. And so then as soon as, Monica had fell back and she was going to get up and she was a little done, but I knew when Monica got up, it was over for Tierra, and Monica could probably take Tierra and Ashley at the same time. And I was like, no, let me go ahead and get out here. So then we went and we had broke it up. And you know how if you've ever been in a fight and you get pulled away before you can get to the other person and you still have all that, you're just mad. I mean, Monica was boo-hooing because she wanted to get Tierra so bad. And I think Ava had Tierra. I had Tierra, and I'm sorry, Ava had Monica. I had Tierra and Ashley. I'm trying to move them this way because I'm trying to protect the other two because, man, when Monica get to them, it's over. And I was so wrong in that, but in that moment, it felt so good. I'm like, good. Somebody get her for that mouth of hers. Boom, handled. Bet she won't say that anymore. And then all the kids that day, they thought Tierra was like a superhero. Like, yeah, because all the kids were scared of Monica. And the thing was, Monica's actually a really nice person. But back then, because she just had been through so much in life, she just wore it on her all the time, and her way of dealing with different things was always being really aggressive to other kids or punking other kids or trying to fight everybody or cussing out adults and stuff. And so in that moment I was like, boom, I needed that moment. That was very terrible of me on my part, but you know what, I was like, hey, she got what she got. So and in all honesty, she walked up on Tierra, and so she got what was coming. I bet she wouldn't do that no more. And then there was the time Dre almost got me stumped out, all right, trying to protect him. So I remember, like I told you guys in the last episode, Dre was one of my older teenagers. He was in 10th grade at the time. Nice kid. He actually was one of my favorite high schoolers as well. Easygoing. He was really happy that I was at the center. We clicked. He was really a good kid, good grades, everything, just really trying to find his lane. Anyway, on one of those days, he thought he lost his iPod. He could not find the iPod to save his life. And so he was under the assumption that the kids stole the iPod. And so remember in the last episode when I said that the kids used to put everything on the pool table, like their backpacks, their coats and stuff, because there was nowhere else to store them. All the kids would sit the stuff on the pool table. So he's over here yelling, "Who got my iPod? I know where y'all got it. Where's my iPod?" And at this point, the kids are unfazed. Like the funniest thing about this center, all kind of things would happen all the time, and the kids would be unfazed. So here's Dre screaming and hollering like he's lost his mind. The kids are on Pump It Up and playing the Michael Jackson game on the Xbox. They could care less about Dre and his feelings. And so he goes to the pool table and he starts throwing these coats. Like he's picking up the coats and throwing them behind him, trying to see if the iPod's under it. One of the coats flies and lands on this kid named Shane. Now, Shane was not really one of my kids at the time. He lived in the neighborhood. Sometimes he'd pop in at the center. So we had kids in the neighborhood that would come to the center sometimes and say hello and just hang out, but they weren't really members. But we would let them come in during Open Lab. Open Lab was that last hour that we were open during the school year. So during that last hour, we'd open up to the whole neighborhood. So, if you needed to use a computer or print something or just hang out, cool, come on in. Just don't come in here acting crazy. And so Shane was about 9. And so the coat landed on Shane's head. Rather than Shane coming to me and saying, "Hey, there's a kid in there and he threw a coat on me," because mind you, I wasn't in the room. I was in the kitchen preparing a snack. Ava was in the computer lab with the little kids. And so, I was kind of back and forth between the kitchen and the main room. And that was one of the reasons why we needed more staff. You couldn't just have 2 people in here with all these kids, because as soon as you turn your back, something's going down. So I'm literally trying to prepare the snack so I can bring it out so we can go into the next, portion of the day. And now it's WWE up in the other room. And so Shane goes, and rather than telling me, he goes home to tell, his mom. Now, I'm not sure what was said to mom. All I know is this. Around that time, every single day when it was snack time, we would have every kid all come into the big room and everybody would sit down in these different chairs in these different rows. We'd do our announcements about whatever was happening. If there was something we needed to share, we would do that. And then we would have snack, and then they would go into free time. And so I'm literally giving my announcement. Now, mind you, I had no idea about Dre and the iPod. I didn't hear any of that when I was in the kitchen. Plus, there's a whole bunch of noise anyway. The Michael Jackson game is going. The kids are playing to Pump It Up and screaming and jumping on that. The kids in the lab are making all their noise. I can't really hear a whole lot of anything. Anybody yelling, it just sounds like the kids are having a good time. And so, we were always taught we're going to operate and organize chaos. It's going to be chaotic, but it will be organized. And so it was exactly what we said it was. So I'm doing my announcements, and I'm like, okay, guys, and so remember, next week during snack, we're going to blah, 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 blah. And then out of nowhere, Will is like, "Mr. Michael, look." I'm like, "Look at what?" I look to the left, and again, remember, the door is glass. You can see straight through the door. I look, I see Shane, I see Shane's mama, I see like 4 other men. I don't know who they are, but I'm sure one is an uncle, one's a brother, one's a daddy, and one's a cousin. I'm like, oh, shoot. I'm like, what happened? And then Dre get up. "Oh, I know they ain't here for me. I know they ain't here for me." I was like, oh, God. So I'm like, not right now. And I'm like, dang it. And so I'm thinking like, what do I do? Because I got about a 12-second window before they get to this door. And I'm like, it's probably not a good idea if they come inside. So, I'm going to go out there and I'll just talk to them. We can just talk. I'm a good communicator. I can make things happen. And so I go and I'm like, "Ava, lock the door when I go outside. Don't let anybody in. Like, just lock the door behind me, okay?" Now, I done forgot I don't have my keys on me. My keys are on the bookshelf, so now I'm locked out. So this has to go well, because if it don't, that's just going to be my face pressed against the window. And so, I'm going like, "Hey, how you guys doing?" And ain't nobody said nothing back. And so I try to walk to them, because they're still walking like in this mob, coming, "Hey, how's it going?" And I saw the brother who was walking a lot faster. So Shane had a brother that was about 17. He didn't come to the center. I didn't know this kid. And this kid was bigger than me, too. He was about 5'11", about 180 pounds. And so he's walking on a mission. So it seems like he and Dre already knew each other, and he had been waiting to get Dre anyway. So he got a look on his face. He sees straight through me. I put my hand up, trying to shake his hand. Boy, smack my hand down. I'm like, huh? Oh, I know this little kid ain't hit me. Wait a minute. Okay. Well, let me deal with the other. So he's walking in. I'm not worried about him going to the door because it's already locked. He's not going to get in anyway. And so I'm trying to talk to him. I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" "You tell me what's going on." "Yeah, that's why I'm out here, because I'm confused. We're doing snacking. Y'all look like y'all in here ready to come and throw hands. I want to know what kind of operation this is where a 16-year-old can beat up my 9-year-old. Huh? What are you talking about? Yeah, Shane said there's a teenager in there that went and beat him up. Whoa, hold on, time out. Wait a minute, hold on now. Listen, I know I was in the kitchen, but I know I didn't miss that much. So I paused for 1 second, and I'm looking at it. through the window, and mind you, every kid in this center is watching through the door and through the window. Like, I look at the window, I can't even see inside the club because there's so many faces watching. I'm like, here y'all go. And then it didn't help. There's Renee. Remember Renee that I said is the instigator? I can hear Renee. Mr. Mike's about to get beat up. I'm like, oh God, here we go. And so I'm like, are you sure? I don't remember that happening. And I was like, Shane, who did what? And he's like, it was Dre. And I'm like, Dre? Wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Because as much of a hothead as Dre can be, Dre doesn't fight, and he's not going to put his hands on anybody, because to be honest, Dre kind of scary. And so I'm like, Dre's not about to fight nobody. And now if he would have said Dennis, I would have been like, okay, that makes sense. I can believe that, because I remember one time Dennis pushed this special needs kid down. I was so mad. We were at the government building, and they had like a group of kids that were a part of a program, and they were in there, and the kids were only copying what they saw the other teenagers doing. So the teenage boys were goofing around and playing and pushing each other, and so one of the kids from the other group came and wanted to push and play too, so he pushed Dennis, and Dennis knocked that boy down so hard. I'm like, Dennis, sir, Dennis, come with me. Let's go, because you about to have us going to jail. Let's go, come on, you done push one of these special needs kids, and he's white. Let's go, let's just get out of here, let's go. Like, man. But anyway, so I was like, there's no way that could have happened, because I was only in the kitchen for about a minute, and one of the other kids would have told me something had happened. And so I was like, Shane, can you tell me exactly what happened? And he was like, yeah, he was yelling at everybody, and then he threw a coat. And I'm like, what happened to the coat? It landed on me. And then what happened? Then that's when I went to get my mom. Wait, so he threw the coat in the air, which he was wrong about, and it landed on you. And then you went to get your mom. So nothing else happened. He didn't like push you, punch you, touch you, do anything. No, but the coat landed on me. So now I'm looking at the whole family like, dang, y'all roll deep, huh? Like, y'all roll real deep. I ain't mad at y'all, but, yeah. So to me, this sounds like one big misunderstanding. Dre is still in the wrong for going and touching anybody's stuff and throwing it. But from what Shane is telling me, and the fact that no other child came and told me anything happened, because that was the other thing. At that center, them kids tell on each other for everything. So the idea of a teenager beating up on a little kid, everyone would have came and got me. And so I just was like, yeah, so I think it was a misunderstanding, but I do apologize for the mishap and everything. And when that happened, like, the whole mood changed, like the whole family kind of calmed down, because now they're looking at Shane like he in trouble, like, you done made us all come out the house for this and everything. And meanwhile, I'm relieved. I'm just happy to be alive, because this was about to go one of two ways, because like the brother was already ready to fight. Nobody in that family wanted to talk when I first got out there. It was about to go down, and they definitely would have fought me. Like, somebody getting hit up in here, you made us leave the house. And so I was so mad at Dre, because the worst part is Dre is inside talking trash, and now I'm over here saving his life, because I ain't scared of nobody. Ain't nobody about to punk and jump. I let Dre have it when I got back and said, Dre, go on the team room, let me talk to you for a minute. Like, man, I let him have it. I was so mad. But Dre always had some mess going. One time, later down the line, we had a volunteer come. She was really, really dope, all right? So we had this volunteer, Miss Lisa. There's this black lady. She was like a kindergarten teacher. She was about 28 at the time. Really, really cool. She fit in so well with us. She was a lot of fun. And so she had been volunteering for a few weeks, and she would come maybe once or twice a week and do arts and bring stuff. And, she was so nice that she bought the club a Nintendo Wii. Like, because her dad had put some money in and bought that for us, like, around the holidays. Very, very nice family. Like, I enjoyed working with her. So Miss Lisa was real cool. So Miss Lisa was there. Miss Ava was there. We were closing down for the day. Like, it's about 6:45. So we've already kind of started sending the kids out. We're cleaning up and laughing. And out of nowhere, Dre storms inside. He ain't been to the center all day. Mr. Michael, I need to talk to you. And he runs in the kitchen. And he goes in the kitchen. He opens that extra closet I told you about where the housekeeping staff normally is. And he slams the door. I'm like, what's wrong with him? Out of nowhere, I hear like a, ah! I'm like, oh, God. What is it now? Because every time we'd be ready to go home, something would go down. And so I'm like, let me go see what he wants. I'm like, all right, Dre, what's up? My mama kicked me out. I'm like, damn it. Because, listen, I had a night planned, okay? I had company coming. I had a great night coming. You ain't about to mess up what's for me, because what's for me is for me. I had a hard week. I'm ready to let loose. And so we're like kicked out for just like a few hours, or she told me she took my key, told me just get out. Okay. And she kicked my sister out too. Oh, God. And I'm like, great, wonderful. And so I'm talking to Ava and Lisa, like, what are we about to do? This is technically like a CPS thing. And I'm like, well, I was like, you don't have any family or anybody here? Just my grandma. Here's her number. I called her grandma. Grandma's in Florida. She ain't around. And then the grandma's like, yeah, I tried to talk to her and she hung up on me too. Oh, God. Okay, what are we gonna do here? So I'm plotting because I'm not about to ruin my night. I earned this night, and so, man. And so Ava's like, well, I got class in the morning. I can't be out all night. I'm like, well, Ava, you don't have too many options anyway because you live with your mama. So you go ahead and go home. I'll see you later. And I tell Lisa she can go home. I make Dre get in my car. Now, we're not supposed to take the kids in our car, but in this moment, he ain't had nowhere to go anyway. So I'm like, get in my car. And we go back to his house. And so I'm talking to him while we're on the way, like, what actually happened? He's like, my mom says she's just tired of me and my sister. And we always got something going on. And we're disrespectful. And she just said she's tired of it. She can't do it anymore. And so, I pull up in front of the house. I call the mom from my phone. Of course, she doesn't answer because I still have my cell phone from Washington State. I've had the same number since I was 14. So she doesn't answer. And so, fortunately, let me tell you how raggedy my center could be at times. We didn't have a landline. We had a cell phone for the center. There wasn't a landline at all. And so, I went ahead and I called from the club phone. And then she answered that number. And so I'm like, hey, this is Mr. Michael. I work at the community center down the street, and I have Dre here with me, and he's told me some things. Is it okay if I come inside, just me, and talk to you for a few minutes? And I could tell that the mom had been crying, and I felt so bad. And she's like, yeah, okay, you can come in. He stays outside, though. I'm like, dang, this woman don't like her child at all. So I go in there. She's laying on the couch with a box of tissues under her blanket. Actually, she had a Snuggie. Remember the Snuggies? Remember those infomercials, the Snuggies? She was in a Snuggie laying down. And, I'm like, so can you tell me what's going on? Because, technically, I'm a mandated reporter, and these kind of things I have to report. I don't want to be that person to break up anybody's family, especially if it's a misunderstanding and so on and so forth. And, I'm trying to tell her all about Dre and how he's a great kid at the center, and, he has good grades, and he helps a lot all the time with the snack and stuff, and I don't really have to correct him too much. He doesn't do a lot of things. And she's like, that's all fine, but over here he's different, to have to go to work and work with those people, and I come home to disrespectful kids. My daughter, she's hitting people with bats. He don't clean his room. She cried and for an hour, spent a good hour telling me how sorry this boy was. I'm like, Lord, Dre. And it's crazy because I was starting to learn that, okay, the kids are very different with me sometimes than they are at home and vice versa. And I think any kid is like that. And so she's telling me all this. And so I'm like, okay, well, what can we do to fix this right now? Because I 100% hear you. I was a teenager just a few years ago. Oh, God, to be that young again. I was just a teenager a few years ago, and I think I took my mom through a lot of the same things and, so on and so forth. But I'm going to say, by you kicking him out and him having nowhere to go, what is the end goal here? Because there's only going to be, one of two options. The police are going to call with some bad news, or he's going to be dead out in the street at some point, or make some poor choices. So how do we want to do this? So she lets me bring Dre in the house, and we have to sit down and have this whole powwow about life and how he's going to start doing better, how he's going to help out around the house, how he's not going to be disrespectful and not talk back, how he's going to be a better example for the sister. Because mind you, the sister's still out in the street somewhere. She was kicked out too, but she didn't go to the center to come see me because I guess she was like, I ain't going over there. I got other friends. So the sister's out wherever. And so, and mind you, before I let Dre in the house, I gave him a prep talk. Like, Dre, listen, when you go in this house, this is not going to be a repeat of what happened with Shane or none of that. Ain't going to be no ego in mouth, because if you mess this up, I don't know where you're going, because you ain't coming to my house either. And so, and I meant that too. There will be no children in my house, period. I love working with kids, but there are boundaries, and there are some I just don't cross, because nobody will make no crazy accusation about me or nothing like that. So no, ain't no kids coming to my house. No child from that center has ever been to Mr. Michael's house or anything like that. As a matter of fact, they couldn't even add me on social media until they graduated from high school. So the only members of that club that might, follow me on Instagram or Facebook, or none of them follow me on Twitter, are the ones that have graduated and are now adults. And I'm like, all right, now you've earned the Instagram pass. I'm real protective of that kind of stuff. And so, plus I also want to kind of keep my personal life a little bit separate from the kids in some instances. So no, coming to my house is not going to be an option. We got to figure it out this right now. So, he goes in there, the mom is crying, he's crying. Thank God they're able to work it out. He's able to go home. Now, unfortunately for me, by the time we were done, it was almost 11 p.m. So my happy date, she was pissed off and she never came over. Thanks a lot, Dre. You owe me. Anyway, one of the things Boss Lady always had going is, like I said, she said yes to so many partnerships, and a lot of times that meant we'd get volunteers, even if we didn't want the volunteers. Because my thing with volunteers, I didn't want to volunteer unless I had already met them and we had a conversation and we could figure out what it was that they would be able to do that would fit within the environment that we had. And I said that because over time, I started to get really, really protective of the kids that I was working with. And like I said, when I first got to the center, it had a reputation. We were, the center nobody had ever heard of because we were so small. So within the company, nobody would ever know who we were when I'd say, oh, I work at this center. They'd be like, where? What's that? Where's that one? And so we had that reputation. We had the reputation of just unruly kids and everything like that. And so people would hear about us, and then when they'd come to volunteer, they always thought it was going to be an episode out of Lean On Me or Dangerous Minds or Freedom Riders, and I'm like, what are y'all talking about? And so at this point, it's about the spring, at this point, it's about March or April of 2012 at this point. And we've been working a lot with the kids. The environment at the center is starting to change. There's still a lot of work to be done, but the kids are very different than they were when I first got there in August. They're still off the chain. A lot of them need things to do, but you can kind of see the growth, and you can see that they're adjusting to a new center. They're a bit more trusting. The parents are starting to come around, and so times are good. So when it came to volunteers, I didn't always just want any and everybody coming up in there, especially people who thought that they knew the culture of my kids better than I did. Stuff like that used to piss me off, because I remember Boss Lady had a partnership with Everest College. Now, if you remember, Everest College was like this for-profit college, and she wanted to do a whole teen career thing, and I was not a fan of it because I knew these for-profit colleges are scams, and they go and they take all this money from people. Because I remember BCTI College and how a bunch of people lost a bunch of money from that, and I remember a bunch of other schools that were in the same predicament where people spend all this money for these accelerated programs, and then when they finish the program, they can't get a job anywhere because half of the stuff is not accredited. And then on top of that, the school gets shut down or whatever, and they've wasted all this money. And usually the loans that they get from those programs are not usually protected under the same, federal student aid I'm not a fan. So when she said Everest and partnership and let's do teen career week, no, I don't want to do that. I lost the battle. And so we had to do this whole career week at Everest, and I was so annoyed. We had to ride all the way to their campus. I don't remember where it was, but I know we were on the bus for at least 40 minutes. And so it was almost like, this is what it felt like to me. With the other centers, the kids were going to Towson University, going to Johns Hopkins, going to visit Howard. Some of them went all the way up to like Penn State. They'd go to all these cool schools, and then my kids, they got to go to Everest. I was like, hell no, I ain't about to do that nonsense with my kids. And so one of the things that also came with the partnership was they had this volunteer program where for the students at Everest, if they volunteered at one of our centers, Everest would pay them $20 an hour to come and volunteer. And so now I'm just sitting here looking sideways because I know what it is they're paying Ava, and I know she ain't making anywhere near that. And I'm like, how is it that the bootleg school that's a for-profit school has this much money to pay volunteers, but our own staff ain't even making, what? All right. So anyway, they bring in all these different volunteers, and I did not want one, but I lost the battle. So they bring in this one girl. And so they brought in this girl, Charity. And so Charity was this very spunky, excited to be in the room. This white girl, she was actually pretty cool. So, we had our interview, and I still didn't really need her there because we already had Lisa. And at this point, I was trying to get a few more men in there because I had a lot of boys, and a lot of the boys were athletic and stuff. And I played sports, but I wasn't really the person to come to for football and all that kind of stuff. I was like, we need some other people in here. And so I was trying to mix it up a little bit because I didn't want the center to just feel like it was only for social programs and art, and because that's what we kept getting. Every time we had a volunteer, they wanted to do an art program. I'm like, how much art we gonna be doing? I love the arts too, but we gonna have to mix it up. So anyway, Charity comes in and she is so excited to be there. Like, yeah. So, oh my God, you have a dance program? I teach dance. And, for me, I'm like, actually, that might kind of work because I'm kind of tired of teaching dance class. I don't have the energy to be trying to come up with choreography every week for some little kids because I'm busy. I like to dance, but I can't do it like I used to because I'm running a community center. I'm being stretched and pulled in a million directions. I'm working on weekends. I got one staff member that's there 3 days out of the week, and then I don't know who's coming on Tuesday or Thursday. It's either going to be Carrie or it's going to be somebody else from the center in the basement, and none of them from the basement want to be there aside from Carrie. And so I just don't have it in me. So I was like, okay, that might be her saving grace. So I was like, we can make this work. And so I remember Charity comes. Charity is excited. I was like, you can even do dance on your first day. I'll already have the kids ready. I'll let the kids know, yeah, you guys are gonna have this new volunteer. She's gonna be a dance instructor. It's gonna be great. Y'all are gonna have a great time. And so, the kids that like to do dance are all excited. Yeah. And so Charity comes to the center. She's in her dance outfit, and had a little t-shirt and stuff. She was ready. And let me say this, Charity was actually a really dope volunteer. I misjudged her. Now she was a lot, but yeah, she was actually a really good volunteer. And I remember I was in the kitchen, and Charity and I were in the kitchen. I was explaining to her how the day was gonna go, and then Clarissa came in. Remember, Clarissa is that girl with all the mouth and all the sass, and she's Ashley's little sister. She's the middle sister. She's the sister and the kid that wants to belong to everything, and she's ready. And so I'm talking to Charity in the kitchen, and then Clarissa comes in and is like, how's this? And I'm like, oh, well, actually, this is our new volunteer, Miss Charity. Charity, this is Clarissa. And before I can finish the introduction, Clarissa's like, well, she isn't that pretty. Huh? What? And she said it so loud. And first of all, Charity wasn't bad looking. I don't know where the girl got that from, but I was like, dang, Clarissa, really, I hope this is not what the people think I'm teaching them. And so I'm like, I'll deal with you later. So anyway, Charity goes in there with the kids. They start doing dance or whatever. I'm in the lab with Ava. We're working with the other kids, and all is well. I hear a loud scream. I'm like, gosh, that doesn't sound good. I go in there. Charity has dislocated some part of her leg. Something's wrong with her knee, and she's on the ground in tears. I'm like, oh, God. So she's good enough to walk and drive, because I guess the leg that was messed up wasn't the leg she needed to drive with. And so when she came back the next time, I think she came twice a week. When she came back the next time, she was on crutches, and she's like, the doctor said I'd never dance again. And I'm like, I felt so bad. I'm like, dang, how you messed your leg up in my sitting? Like, I felt so bad. But, she actually still stayed and volunteered with us through the summer. And I mean, she was great energy. She was out there. If we went and played baseball or something outside at one of the playgrounds, she was right there playing it. She was coloring. She was painting. They were singing it. Like, she was a great volunteer. She's one of the few good ones I had. She was a good one. Lisa was a good one. Those might have been the two best volunteers I had. I had this other guy that came from Slovakia. Very interesting. I don't know if he was one of my favorites, but it was very interesting. I'll get to him later down the line a few years from now as far as the storyline. But yeah, so Charity broke her leg. She was one of the girls from Everest. But again, going back, one of the things I always wanted to do with the kids, I wanted them to always feel really special, because it bothered me that our center was so small, and I used to feel so guilty anytime we went to another center and the kids would see how big the other centers were, because some of the other centers, they would have recording studios, they'd have music rooms with instruments and keyboards and drums and xylophones and clarinets and tubas, and some clubs had wrestling rooms where it was like the floor was like the wrestling mat and they could wrestle. Some clubs had indoor volleyball, some clubs had gyms, some had industrial kitchens, some had teen rooms that were the size of my entire club, some had big giant fields, one had a pond. I was just like, man. And so I didn't realize we were the smallest center, and so I used to feel so bad. So I always wanted to make sure that everything we did was grand. I would never half step on anything that I wanted to do with the kids, because I wanted them to feel just as important as the kids did at the other centers. And so I used to find ways to, keep the kids engaged and excited. And like I said, I was using my money a lot. And I wasn't making anything. Rent was high and I wasn't making that much money. Fortunately, my car was paid off and I didn't have a car note. And I had been blessed to not have any debt from undergrad. That was my saving grace. Because if I had to pay student loans, I would have definitely not been able to pay any of my bills. I was like, every month I'd finish right on the cusp, where either I was in the red by maybe $100 or $200, or maybe I had like $8 to my name. I ain't never had no money in the beginning. And so I used to do all these things for the kids. Like one of the things I used to do, we always had what I called like the homework all-stars. These were the kids that, again, when we would do homework and stuff, they would always get the little points and stuff. And so if you had enough points, I would take you out to eat like once a month. And so I would take the kids to Applebee's. I'd take like my top 12 kids. And so, they get to go to Applebee's and, I didn't use my money. So I'm over here living off beans and noodles for the rest of the month. But, at least the kids got to get Applebee's and, or I'd order donuts and, just do a bunch of really nice things. And then one of the things that I also started to learn as well is you have to give attention and accolades to the kids that are not your top performers as well, because you have to give them something to look forward to. Sometimes I think we praise and give so much to the kids that are already gonna be great that you have to remember that those other kids that are also gonna be great as well, sometimes they need the extra boost, they need the extra motivation. And so I would learn that over time as well. And I found ways to pretty much incorporate a space where everybody had an opportunity to win something or to be great or to make it on one of these field trips or do something. We used to do all kind of things. Like I used to do a thing called secret field trips, which the kids used to love. So secret field trip was pretty much, every time the kids did something great, I would also give them like a raffle ticket with their name on it and I'll put it in a bucket. So, if they did, I don't know, we cleaned up and they helped wipe the tables. Okay, you get a ticket. Good job. We did a game outside and the team that lost just got blown out of the water, but they had really good sportsmanship about losing. And normally, half the team is crying and wants to fight, but on this day, nobody wants to fight. Everybody's in a good mood and they just go to the computer lab and play Roblox quietly. You know what? All of y'all are gonna get a ticket today. Good job. And so everybody would get these tickets, right? And what I'll do is like, the more good things you do, you get a ticket. And then I'd also kind of meet people where they were. So sometimes you get that kid that honestly, they ain't ever gonna get a ticket. So when they finally just did something simple like, they dropped a piece of trash on the floor and before I could yell at them to pick it up, they picked it up and threw it away. Oh, thank God. Here's a ticket. Alan, ticket. Yeah, take it. Yes. It's gonna be the only one you get, but take it, please. And so at the end of the month, pretty much, I'd have this bucket full of tickets with all these kids in there, And so the dope thing is, rather than just using my list with the leaderboard for the kids who were doing homework, and because you always knew which kids were going to be the top 10 kids every week, the bucket with all these raffle tickets just kind of mix it up where people had an opportunity to win. And so they were in the same pool as kids that were the overachievers. And so I would draw, about 14 names because 14 could fit on the bus. And then I'd pretty much create the permission slip. I'd talk to each parent and say, hey, your child's been selected for, the secret field trip. Please don't tell them where we're going. I tell the parents this is where we're going to be going. And so, the kids would have no idea where they were going. And I'd be such a troll because I'd be like, yeah, they get on the bus, they're all excited, and they don't even realize it's going to be like a fun trip. They don't know what it is. I'm like, yeah, guys, so today we are going to the box factory. And I used to always say that because I remember seeing that on a Simpsons episode. And the kids are like, oh, God, box factory, what is this? Oh. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Or I'd say something like, yeah, we're going to the paper factory. And I'd be so serious about it, too. I'm like, yeah, so it's the paper factory. And I want you guys to understand, when you get in there, do not touch anything because the paper is going to be coming off the machines so fast. And if you don't pay attention, your fingers will get cut off. So please don't touch anything. We're just going to look at the paper. We won't be allowed to touch anything. You'll see how they make the line paper. They'll give you a packet of paper to take home, and then we're going to head on back. And so the kids would never know where we were going. And then, I'd pull up, and sometimes I wouldn't even go to the actual venue. I'd pull up at like a place maybe 3 blocks over that didn't look fun. You go to the industrial side of town, so it does look like we're parking at a factory. And then after, I'm such a troll. I would literally like get up and take off my seatbelt and take attendance like we're about to go. The kids are looking all unenthused. They got their little club t-shirts on and they're over it. And then I'm like, okay, I'm just kidding. We're going to laser tag. I'm like, yeah! I'm just kidding. We're going to the trampoline park. Yeah! I would always switch it up. So those were always really, really fun. And so me and Ava had a conversation. I'm like, we have to figure out how to get more money because I can't, we can't keep paying for these things out of pocket because up until about 2013, we did everything out of pocket. Them little $150 Costco cards boss lady was giving us wasn't enough. And a lot of times when we wanted to do a field trip, we were always told there was no money because the company was in some financial hardship at the time. We just never had money to do anything. Let me tell you how broke we were. One time the bus needed some new tires, right? The bus needed some new tires. And I was able to negotiate with the people at the place. And like, okay, well, we'll be able to do, replace all 4 tires for $600. And so I called boss lady. I'm like, okay, so they said they could do the tires, but because the tires were starting to dry rot. And I'm like, yeah, well, you got to switch these because I'm not driving this thing anywhere else. And so I was like, yeah, it's going to be $600 to replace all the tires. $600? $600? I'm like, it's a bus. You acting like I'm driving a Geo Metro. It's a whole bus with a bunch of kids in it. We're gonna have to spend the money because the last thing we need is for one of these tires to blow up while I'm driving, and then next thing you know, we're upside down in a ditch somewhere and the bus is on fire. And so that's how broke we were at the time. There was never money for anything. We were so broke as a center when it came to money at that time that a lot of times Ava and I would butt heads sometimes in regards to how to spend money, because a lot of times there just wasn't money coming in. Sometimes there would be pockets of money that would come in, like maybe a company or a partner would give us $2,000 or $3,000, but it wasn't $2,000 or $3,000 that we could just do anything with. It usually was a part of a restricted grant. Restricted grant just means that, I don't know, if a company says here's $2,000 for tobacco prevention, then all of the money must be spent on tobacco prevention. You just can't go and take the kids to Chuck E. Cheese. No, it must be tobacco prevention. So maybe, yeah, you can take them to a health and wellness center where there's people rehabilitating from bad lungs after years and years of smoking, but no, you just can't, go and buy all the kids ice cream. Everything must tie to tobacco prevention. And so I remember one time Ava was doing a program with her girls, because we had all these programs we did with the kids, programs for the teens, programs for the little kids, the girls, the boys, sports programs, social programs, history programs, like anything we could think of creatively, we had programs. That day she wanted to make smoothies with the girls. Cool. And so she's like, Mr. Michael, so I was going to use the Costco card, that same card with $150 on it, and I probably already spent about $20 on paper and glue that day, and so really we only got about $130. And she's like, yeah, I want to spend some of the money on the card to go to Costco so I can get some stuff to make the smoothies. And I'm like, okay, cool, well, how much you need? And she's like, oh, I was going to spend about, I don't know, maybe $50. $50? $50? Ava, $50? And she's like, Michael, we ain't got $50 for smoothie? No! And I know what kind of smoothies you gonna make. You gonna be trying to have star fruit and kiwi and all that expensive stuff. You better come back in here with some apples and a banana and use your imagination. We got Kool-Aid packs in there, so you just can't, $50, we ain't got it. It's too much. It was a mess. We ain't ever had no money. Now, things would get better over time, but in these early years, the money was funny. And so I was really good at negotiating and working things out. Also at this time, there was a new lady that worked at the rental office next door, all right? So it was this white lady, Miss Linden. Like, Miss Linden was real cool. She was like the property manager, and I really liked her. She was like this white woman with the big blonde, big hair. You know, like when you think of those country singers in the 90s, like the Trisha Yearwood and all of them, they used to have the big hair. That's how she looked, and she drove this really bright red convertible. And at first, I didn't really know how she was going to be, because I'm like, oh God, please don't let this be like another Tabitha. Because remember, Tabitha was the other lady that worked at the rental office, and she was nasty, just mean, smoke her cigarette, not speak to you when she saw you, always had an attitude. Sometimes she'd come and try to tell us we were too noisy, as if we weren't a community center. And so, God, fortunately Tabitha bounced up out of there too. So she had been gone for a while, and so it was just Miss Jenny. That was the lady that was from the Virgin Islands. That was really cool. And then Miss Linden came in, who was like the big boss, and Miss Linden brought in like 1 or 2 more staff members to work at the rental office. But Miss Linden was a dreamer. She had vision, and she came to the center and she's like, I love what you're doing with this place, because she had like a southern accent. I just love what you're doing with this place, but I want to do so much more. Like, I really think we could just turn this place around. I mean, I see bookshelves here, I see a carpet here, couches, you need color. We can do so many things that would just be so amazing. And I'm right there with her like, yes, somebody believes in us. And so, we meet with her and Boss Lady. So it's me, it's Ava, it's Boss Lady, and it's Miss Linden. And Miss Linden talks about all these things she wants to do. And I mean, she took this seriously. She came with like a blueprint that she had drawn out, and she had this new vision for how we could renovate the entire club. She wanted to split the multi-purpose room into 2 rooms, where one side would be, all the games, but the other side would be more like a library. We put like a big giant carpet over there, a couch, some beanbag chairs, some new bookshelves, like all kind of stuff. All the stuff that Ava and I had been asking for all year when we kept being told there was no money to do anything. And here's Boss Lady. Oh yeah, we can definitely do this, because I mean, I just have so much in the account that we could buy stuff with. And me and Ava looking like, You didn't even have the $600 for the bus not too long ago, and when I had to take the kids to Applebee's, I had to pay. And when I had to take the kids to laser tag, I had to pay. And when I had to take the kids to Funland, I had to pay. And when I had to take the kids to the flight in the trampoline park, I had to pay. And when I took the kids to get donuts, I had to pay. And when we went skating or whatever, I had to pay. All of a sudden, y'all got money. And mind you, we're not supposed to pay for none of this stuff. They have a whole reimbursement process, but the problem is, it was always some nonsense. You go through the process and not get your money back for 4 and 5 months. So, I'm doing all this stuff with the hopes that I'd get reimbursed, and a lot of times I didn't in those early years. And so I'm looking at Boss Lady like, okay, relax. Even Miss Linden was looking like, okay, well, for you to have all this money to do stuff, this center looks bad. Let me tell you about Miss Linden. Miss Linden came, and she hooked that center up. First of all, she bombed the place. We had to close down for 3 days. She got the exterminator, because again, this place was still roach infested. She bombed the whole club. Okay, roaches be gone. Ants be gone, spiders be gone, even the lizards wasn't coming up in there no more. And so they bombed the place. She got some painters. They came and gave the center colors, like colors that fit for the kids. And so the rooms had different colors, and even the teen room, she painted this sea green color. She had this big giant mural that looked like a bridge going into destiny, like, so you could go in there and calm down. Like, she had every room themed out. She was on her Martha Stewart tip for real. So that room, like, it was like this green room. That was the teen room. The green room with the bridge mural on the wall, these soft pink wicker chairs and lamps and green this, and I think we had put a TV in there, and there was a couch. Like, she hooked that room up. And then in the multi-purpose room, she split it in half. So we created what we called the reading room or the quiet zone. And so the quiet zone was like this big red carpet, these double pan like black bookshelves, a black couch that we had got, some chairs, some beanbag chairs, pillows, just a nice tranquil area. And then on the other side, like, I got rid of that big giant pool table, which took us forever to get out because nobody wanted it. I had to go on Craigslist and was like, it's free, please take it. And then these big Samoan men came, and they came and took it. But it was such a big and heavy table, you had to take it apart because it was too heavy to lift. So they took it apart and lifted it right out of there. But that was a heavy table. Even they were struggling. And Samoans are huge, but even they were struggling to get it out of there. But they were so happy that, I gave them the table for free. So they gave me a free case of Heineken, and I'm like, well, thanks. I can't really drink this at work, but I guess I can take this home. I wasn't really a beer drinker. But anyway, they were nice. And so we got rid of the pool table. We got rid of the broken foosball table. She got us a new foosball table that actually worked. She installed some counters on the other side. She got new tables. So all those old wooden folding tables that were breaking and sliding and falling, all of that was gone. She ordered these custom-made tables, beautiful tables. The custom-made tables, new chairs. We got rid of the big box TVs. She got us this beautiful, like, flat screen that was mounted on the wall. And so that was now the new TV. What else? In the computer lab, she painted the computer lab a new color. The kitchen got painted. The bathroom got painted. The hallways got painted. She gave us new posters. Like, she spent a good $5,000 or $6,000 on us. And I was like, dang, this is what my company is supposed to be doing. Not this lady that works at the rental office next door. But it was such a nice deed. That was the first time I saw somebody really, like, actually care about us. And so I was like, dope. What made it so good was that she was the property manager. That meant she was allowed to do things that we weren't allowed to do. We didn't own the building we were in, so we had to abide by whatever rules the county had for that property under the guise of what the rules were that the property had for our center. So even if I wanted to randomly paint or do things, I'd have to go through a million loopholes and check off a bunch of boxes before I could even get a yes to do so. So by her being somebody who was like the big lady in charge over the property, we just got to skip like 50 steps, and she was able to just make things happen on top of the fact that she had connections and resources. So it just helped, because Liz and I had been fighting and clawing to make some changes at the center. We had said, yes, can we do something about the roaches, and Boss Lady coming there with some raid and some traps. Like, that's not how this works. Can we get some new furniture or new this or new that? And it's kind of like, oh well, it's coming, just give it time. And we had been giving it time, because at this point we've been there close to a year in the center. Even though Liz and I have cleaned it up and got rid of all the junk, we need newer things. Everything in here is old. It seems like the center looks like it did when it first opened, a handful of years earlier, but it's still the same furniture, the same everything. So by her having some pull and making things happen, we were forever grateful. So I absolutely loved the center. Like, I already loved it before, but now that it looked how we wanted it to look, and she took our input in regards to what we wanted, and she listened to us. Like I said before, in this nonprofit world, it helps to listen. It helps so much to listen. The worst thing is when people think they know everything, or they can tell you what you need to do. Sometimes when you're trying to work in a community that, one, they didn't ask for your help. So by you volunteering it, you have to be in a space where you're not invasive. And she was not invasive. She understood our journey and met us where we were. So I appreciate her for that. That was the dopest thing, because I feel like that is what helped to kick off the next phase of the center just being super, super great. So around this time, it's getting further into the spring. So the school year is pretty much winding down, and the next phase would be summer camp. But before we even got to that, we'd have to go to a whole bunch of meetings and do a lot of prep for summer camp. We didn't realize how big of a deal it was, because really when it came to our center, we never had to charge for anything. We charged the membership. The membership fee was $25 a year at the time, and the only other thing we charged for would be summer camp. And so around that same time, I also got an email, and it said, hey, congratulations, you've been selected to go to Myrtle Beach on the company, conference. And I said, is this really for me? Oh, okay. Cool, I guess. And so they had this big giant conference in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and so I had been invited to go. But this is when I learned the company was kind of broke, because originally the email was like, hey, we're gonna need this information from you, scan your ID, blah 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 blah, because we're gonna get all the plane tickets. And so I'm like, okay, Myrtle Beach, all right, this is gonna be fun. And then it changed from we're gonna get plane tickets to, oh no, we're gonna get a bus and we're gonna ride down. I'm like, ride down? Myrtle Beach is like an 8-hour drive from here. Ain't nobody about to sit on no bus all day. And so it wasn't like I had a choice, and because I was already registered, boss lady had already registered me, and she was so excited for me to go. And so in that spring, I went down to Myrtle Beach, and I thought it was going to be kind of cool, because it was like, okay, I'll get to go with other people from the company that are not the people I work with. It wasn't going to be anybody from the basement location going. John from the Herndon location was not going to be going. Ava, like I said, was still a student. She wouldn't be able to go anyway, because it was like a week-long thing. And so, they gave me a sub to fill in for me and some other stuff like that. And I was going to actually get to hang with a lot of the staff that were from the other DC clubs, and the clubs in Maryland and the clubs in Virginia. I was like, oh, this would be really cool. And so we got on the bus and we rolled to Myrtle Beach, and the bus had no working outlets. The outlets didn't work on the bus. The bus didn't have Wi-Fi. But I got to meet some new people, and later down the line, I met this girl, Jeanette. And now Jeanette, later down the line, would end up being my boss years later. We'll get back to her later, but Jeanette was really, really cool. And so I just got a chance to really hang out, meet other people that were in my same predicament, hear some of the same stories that I thought only I had experienced, and it was really cool just getting to know a lot of the other directors. And so they pretty much had people that were in all kind of positions, people that were the directors, people that may have been daycare directors, people that worked at headquarters and worked in the marketing team, people that were on the executive level. So you met all these different people on top of the folks who also work for this company but in different states. And so it was really, really cool. The only problem was when I got back. Around that same time, my father had mailed me this box, and in this box was every childhood home video I had. They wanted me to turn the videos into DVDs, go to one of those places and give them the tapes and they turn them into DVDs. And so I was excited to do that. My father mailed the box while I was in Myrtle Beach. And so the apartment complex that I lived in, it was an apartment complex where I might have been the only person that spoke English in my building. Everybody was like from El Salvador, and I had like one or two families in my building that were from like Ghana or Sierra Leone. And so when I got back, my dad was like, oh, so did you get the box? I'm like, what box? He's like, oh, it should have got there like 5 days ago. 5 days ago, Dad, I told you I was going to be in Myrtle Beach. Why would you send the box while I'm not here? And so I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking, well, maybe it's just at the main office, because if there was nobody there to sign for it, they'll put it in the main office and then I can get it. So I go to the office. I'm like, hey, I have a box here that was sent. And they're like, we have no box. And so I'm like, what? So, I have to get the tracking number from my dad. And so we go through that process. We call UPS, and it says, oh, yeah, the box was signed for. Signed for by who? I wasn't there. It says it was signed for by you. It couldn't have been signed for by me because I was in South Carolina. And so, long story short, somebody in my building signed for my box. I don't know if they knew what it was, but they signed for my box. And so for the next week and a half, I'm having a whole meltdown and a panic attack because my entire childhood is now missing. Also in that box were a bunch of other things. So I had like my South Park DVDs in there. My dad had sent like my Cosby Show DVDs, all the concerts I used to record off the TV. My original recording of the Velvet Rope Tour straight from the TV was in that box. My recording of the Jacksons Triumph and Victory Tour was in that box. That was when you used to order the bootleg tapes off of eBay and stuff. So all of that was in there, some CDs, and so that whole box was going, and I was freaking out. And I remember, I was going door to door, and my Spanish ain't that good, but I was trying that day. La grande caja roja es mi. Like just up there sounding a fool. I had made signs, flyers. The apartment building wouldn't let me keep the flyers up. I never found that box. I still get pissed every time I think about it. That box had any video footage of me from birth until I was in, pretty much until I left for college. So, the more I think about it, the madder I get. So I'm gonna move on. But just know that week sucked. I was pissed when I got back. And listen, had we flew, maybe I would have been home in enough time as opposed to being on the bus all day. I don't know, but man, I was pissed. And then that same week was the pee bottle incident. Oh, don't get me started. So, like I said in the previous episode, there was a kid, Will, that I really enjoyed, but there was one stupid thing that he did that I was like, what the hell? And so I was currently at the store. Like, I went to the store to go and get some things for the center, and that specific day, it was Ava and Charity were there that day. And so when I got back to the center, they're all sitting in there on the floor with the lights off. It's dead silent. Ava is crying. I'm like, what is going on in here? I look at Will. He is boo-hooing. I'm like, who did what? What just happened in here? So we had this little kid named Noah, who was like 5, kindergarten, brand new kid who just started coming. And so Will thought it was funny to literally piss in a bottle and give it to Noah and tell him that it was tea and go ahead and drink it. And the poor kid took a good sip. And so Ava said all she knows is she was standing there and the kid ran to her with it literally hanging off of his chin, dripping, and he's screaming. And I didn't know what to do, because technically that's grounds for just pretty much expulsion. You're done forever. Done. You will never come back. Any other center, you'd be out of there forever. That's lawsuit. That's liability. That is all kind of things that you can't even imagine. I was so pissed. Ava was so... We couldn't even figure out how to respond because I wanted to just choke him. I was just going to choke him out in that moment, but I couldn't. And so... he's crying because he knows he messed up. I called his mom. We talked to Noah's parents. It was horrible. Them parents were. If I've ever seen a moment where parents were pissed off, it was in that moment. And the worst part is, like, it happened when the kids were like all outside. It wasn't even anything that was on the staff, because when everything happened, the school bus had just dropped the kids off. The way that the neighborhood was set up, you have this big giant apartment complex. The very last bus with the elementary comes around 4 o'clock. And so when they drop the kids off, they drop them off in the neighborhood. Some kids go home, they don't come to the center because they gotta go home and clean up or whatever. But then you have this army of kids that comes to the center. But our rule is this, and we've always made this clear with the parents. The children are not under our watch until they come into the doors and sign in, and then they're under our watch. Because the playground in the area in the neighborhood is technically the backyard for the kids. The school buses do not drop the kids off at the center. They drop the kids off in the neighborhood, and then the kids have free reign to go and do whatever they want. However, if they come to the center, then they're under our watch, and they are our responsibility until we close. And so what ended up happening is Will didn't come into the club that day. He got off the bus, and sometimes the kids will get off the bus and they won't come to the center for maybe an hour. They're gonna play outside. They may walk to the shopping center nearby and go buy candy, or the ice cream truck is outside. So sometimes they'll stay out and do whatever they do. So Will was not even with us that day. And little Noah, I think the mom had got him off the bus, and so I think mom was letting him play outside for a little bit, and then she was gonna go ahead and walk him on over to us. And somehow in the mix of that's when the bottle incident happened outside. Something with Will and his friends playing outside. Somehow Noah got a hold of the bottle, got him a good sip, and that's nasty too. When people first piss, it's still warm and stuff. Oh God. And so when everything happened, no one knew to go and tell an adult. For some reason, I don't know where mom went, but he went and he told Miss Ava. And even though Will technically wasn't even under our watch yet, the way Ava called him inside so quick, get in here now. Actually everybody come inside. If you're coming in today, get inside right now. So, everybody's inside, and then that's around the time I pull up and then we just come into all the chaos. And the other aspect about working at the community center and working in that neighborhood is after so many years, you end up building a rapport with the entire neighborhood. Everybody knows who you are. Every parent knew Mr. Michael. Every parent knew Miss Ava. And even when people's kids didn't come to the center, they knew that if something was going on in the neighborhood, Mr. Michael or Miss Ava would take care of it, even if it were kids that weren't at the center. So even as time would progress, sometimes the teenagers and stuff, there'd be some high school drama or something. It's kids that came from another neighborhood coming to fight somebody else. And as soon as I would pull in with my red car, they'd be like, oh, dang, Mr. Michael's here. And they'd move to fight to another neighborhood. They just already knew. So it was kind of interesting to see that rapport kind of built. But man, that was a day. And oh, God, it was horrible. It was such a long process to get that cleared up because it wasn't good at all. I was so mad at Will for that one. Will's saving grace was me, because in any other circumstance at any other place, he would have been out of there and done. But I did not like the idea of permanently kicking kids out of anything, because kids are going to be kids and do really, really stupid things. And I had to look back at when I was that age. Now, I didn't do anything that wild, but I think I did enough stupid things as well. And the other challenge was the center was in their neighborhood. And so even if a kid was suspended or expelled or anything like that, there was nothing else for them to do. So their only other option would be to get in more trouble. So it was kind of like we didn't really do a lot of suspensions. Now, he did get suspended for a few weeks for that one, but I didn't expel him because I knew his backstory. Like he had a whole backstory. The father died and got poisoned some years earlier. The family didn't tell him or the siblings, and they found out months after the father had been gone, which it was crazy. So the father had died, and they just ended up spending a lot of weeks at a relative's house. So they had no idea what was happening. And at the time, little JJ, who was the younger sibling, and then the sister, Renee, that's the instigator, she was, I want to say at that time, she was only about 8 when it happened, and Will would have been about 5, and JJ was a newborn, so they really weren't sure what happened. Then they just remember going home, and it was their father's funeral service or memorial service at the house, and so he already had enough going on. So things like that, I start to dig deep in, and I'm like, you know what, I can't. He needs people around. He still needs structure. So no, he's not going to be expelled. But we're going to find a way to work around this. So it took a minute to get all that cleared up, but it was a lot. Now, he would get in some more trouble when he became an adult. I'm like, you know what, sir? Do better. Dang it. Yeah, that'll be a story for maybe 6 or 7 episodes from now, because that definitely happened in year number 9, I think. But, some folks may say, well, why would Will get suspended if it was something he did on his own free will when he wasn't under your supervision and he was just in the neighborhood? And I'd say the thing to remember as well is, again, this is a tight-knit community. Even when things happen in the neighborhood, it still somehow will tie back to me and Ava, just because. And at that point in time, it's like Ava and I are trying to put out 50 fires with Noah's parents, and it's like, Will, you're not about to just be outside living it up with this nonsense you did and then think you're going to just get to come to the center the same day or the next day, because now there's a conversation of almost conflict of interest, where you have a parent who has a kindergartner who they're trusting with us, and at the same time, here's this 4th grader that has just done this atrocity to them, and they're both at the center in the same day or the next day. It just didn't work like that. And so there would be moments sometimes where things in the neighborhood would still affect the kids at the center. Kind of almost like when a school has their issues, where, I don't know, there's some drama that started at school, and maybe the kids don't fight and beat each other up in the cafeteria. They go and wait till school is out, and then they go and find some place in the neighborhood to fight, and the message gets back to the school, and then so the school usually is like, all right, well, we're gonna send everybody home, for a few days just because we need this tension to settle down. It was almost that same kind of energy, and we just needed the other kids to understand, no, y'all just can't be doing any and everything thinking just because you didn't write your name on a piece of paper signing in that you have free reign to just go and do anything. So Will unfortunately needed to learn a lesson that day, so he went on a nice little vacation, and it didn't help, he lived right across the street, so he's just looking out the window all day while we're outside playing dodgeball or whatever, because that was our other rule. If you were suspended, which again, kids weren't really suspended that often, and if they were, it was normally for a day or two. If we were outside doing an activity, you could not participate. You could sit and watch, but you wasn't playing with us, so no, because clearly, nope. Enjoy the vacation. We'll see you when you get back. Tell us how it was and bring us a postcard. And we had the same rule for if the kids got in trouble at school. They knew that if they had gotten suspended from school, they could not come to the center as well. And that used to not be a rule, but then we started to notice kids would get kicked out of school for spitting on the teacher and doing all these different things, and we'd be having an ice cream party at the center. So, they come straight from home, straight from suspension, and come and get them a nice scoop of ice cream. And we're like, wait a minute, that's not going to work. And oddly enough, one of the things that ended up happening is a lot of the kids got in less trouble at school because they wanted to come to the center so bad. So they started thinking about, man, well, if I get in trouble at school, then I can't go to the center this day, and they're going to be going to they're going to be going to Six Flags next week. I really want to go, so let me not act crazy this week. And so it balanced out. I'm not a fan of suspensions. I'm really not. I don't like it because I think a lot of times kids are unfairly targeted sometimes and are often suspended too often. But sometimes you just have to set the bar. And once the bar was set, it was smooth sailing. We never really had to suspend a lot of kids too often. It was very rare. If anything, kids would get sent home for the day because they just were doing too much, and then they could come back the next day as long as it wasn't something crazy. But, that was a story, y'all. Anyway, so we get into the space where, it's getting closer and closer to summer camp. And so now we're doing the prep, and apparently summer camp is this hot commodity in this neighborhood because it was so affordable. So what I did not know, and nobody gave me any insight on, is the previous year, the center had a grant. Like, there was this grant that it had gotten for about 2 years. This was specifically with the county. It wasn't one of these bigger grants that I said we weren't eligible for. This was something we were eligible for because it was kind of like a community partnership type thing. This grant allowed it so that summer camp would only be $10 for the kids a week. $10 a week. Again, children getting childcare 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, breakfast, lunch, field trip, pool, park day, $10. Doesn't that sound like heaven? So summer camp always sold out right away. There were only about 25 slots, and summer camp would be sold out on day one. So, we'd send out the papers, and literally that same day, parents would be like running to bring us them papers back. Because again, that means that for 8 weeks, you paid $80 for 8 weeks of summer camp. However, that grant was all done with, and that grant no longer existed. And so when I got there, summer camp went back to the regular price. The real price was $100 a week. However, there was a sliding scale. Depending on, if the parents made under a certain amount, or if the kids were on free or reduced lunch, then the camp would drop down to $25 a week, which is still a really, really great deal. $200 for 8 weeks, 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, breakfast, lunch, snack, field trip, pool, park day, and enrichment activities. Sounds great. Oh no, these parents let me have it. What do you mean the camp is $25? It was $10 last year. And I'm trying to explain to these parents, because we had a meeting about summer camp, I'm trying to explain to them that, hey, that was with a grant. I have nothing to do. Well, why don't you get the grant this year? Because the other director got the grant. No, that grant wasn't even anything that the director did. That was something that was pretty much nominated and put into place for that entire center, and any center that was in Region 1 of Fairfax County. So everybody got that grant, but that grant doesn't exist anymore. And so, yeah, everybody has to go full price. Now, if you want to make comparisons, we have other centers where camp is $150 a week. And so this camp is $25 for the majority of it. That's still too much. I'm like, listen, y'all already, and I can't fight with y'all on money, but listen, we are literally stretching pennies here trying to make this work so your kids can have the best experience, okay? We don't really have a real company card. I'm paying for a whole bunch of stuff out of pocket, right? You guys pay $25 for the entire school year, okay? That's 13 cents a day. You can't even get a gumball machine out of the gumball machine for less than a quarter, but y'all are getting, childcare every day for the whole school year. And now, for the summer camp, it's $25 a week. If I could make it free, I would, but we have to somehow come into some money, and the organization is broke right now, so we really need the money. So I'm getting cussed out. Parents don't want to hear it, but they all still signed up anyway. Because even with that, we still were the most affordable summer camp in the area. Now, there was one center across the street that was $10 a week, It was this really big center too, but the problem was parents didn't like sending their kids to that center because too much stuff went down over there. It was always a fight and everything. Like one time there was a basketball game. One of the parents didn't like one of the calls, and so he cussed out the ref. And so the parent and the ref got in a fight. So the ref left and came back in with a gun. And then everybody ran out of the game, and so they had to have armed security there. Like, so it was just like, people didn't want to send their kids to that center. But there was a whole lot of stuff. And the thing that also sucked is for summer camp, you had to plan the entire day. It couldn't just be free time, because we started to learn that every time we had some kind of free time, something was going down. That's when somebody's lunch money would go missing. That's when coats would fly and land on kids. It was always something. So we were like, there will be no free time. And the organization is like, you guys have to have something planned every day for the full day. So Ava and I were in there, and we had planned programming for 8 hours a day, 8 weeks, 5 days a week. And I was like, we were burnt out. Like, man, this summer is about to kick our behind. And the worst thing, again, we didn't have a lot of money. So even the field trips, we had to find free field trips. And so free field trips are not fun. You can only go to the museum so many times, but we had every museum you could think of we were going to. We had went to the Air and Space Museum. We were going to go to the Smithsonian, History Museum. We were going to go to the Torpedo Factory. We were going to go to all these places. Well, sometimes we were just going hiking. That was going to be the field trip, because I was like, this sucks. And so and with that, we also would have to figure out the busing arrangements, because, the summer camp, even though we were supposed to stop at 25, I think we took 30 or 35. And, there's only 15 that can fit in these buses. So we're going to at least need 2 buses. So we'd have to figure out how to do everything, which meant that we'd have to coordinate our field trip days, our pool days, and our park days with the other 2 centers, the Basement Center and the Herndon Center, because there was only 3 buses between the 3 centers. So we'd have to figure out who on what day got what. Or maybe there was 4 buses. And so one of those days there would be one center that would get 2 buses. And so we'd have to figure out who could do what and which staff would swap. And again, Ava's only there Monday, Wednesday, Friday. She's not going to be there Tuesday and Thursday, so I still have to figure out who could swap. And at this point, people like Don were campaigning for them to just fire Ava, because they were like, why can't y'all just get somebody that's going to be there 5 days a week? And the argument was like, no, that's not fair, because initially she was up front with her schedule from day one. She said she's in class Tuesdays and Thursdays. She's going to be graduating next year anyway, and if things are going well, she's most likely going to stay anyway. But she told us from day one she has class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And Boss Lady had the idea that, okay, well, we'll bring in another person who'd fill in that gap. So no, we can't take it out on Ava, because she's trying to further pursue her education. And like I said, she's been great at the center. I don't want to do it if she's not there, because she's been perfect to work with. Y'all not about to mess up what's good on our end just because y'all have to send somebody once a week. I wasn't complaining when I had to bust y'all kids around somewhere. And so, we would go and we would work on this schedule. And man, the thing that was also different, during the school year, we had downtime. Like I said, me and Ava, or I'd get there at 11. Towards later down the line, Ava's schedule would start changing, but normally I was there at 11. I could do all the planning for the day, map out everything we would do. The kids would start getting off the school bus around 2 o'clock, and we'd have everything planned. With the summer, there was no time for that. When you pulled up at the front door, they were there. They were ready. You had to meet the food vendor, because the food vendor would have the breakfast and the lunch and all that stuff. There was no time to plan anything, so you had to do all the planning in the spring. And so, we go and we finally get to that summer camp. And it's a new time now. Now we're, instead of working 11 to 7, we're working 9 to 5. And it sounds great because now we're getting off earlier, but we're actually working a lot harder now. And so, man, it was a long, long time. Because it's really hard to keep 25, 30 kids entertained for 8 hours every day, 5 days a week. And so how we did it, we had the kids. Camp was only for the elementary age. And then I'd take 2 or 3 or 4 teenagers. They'd get to be our counselors in training or our volunteers and help us as well. And so they get opportunities to do things. And the other thing is, even in this center, there's nowhere as an adult where you can hide and have 5 minutes of downtime, because there's no rooms. Every room is occupied. And so you were on your feet for 8 hours, and you were on it. There were also some new kids that would be joining us for summer camp. There was this kid named Kamari. Kamari was another one who he just needed stuff to do. Kamari had a lot going, but he really just needed stuff to do. All right. There was Avery, another one who just really needed something to do. There was Stacy, who was Kamari's sister. Stacy was all right. She ain't do too much. She was scared of Mother Nature, but other than that, she was all right. And then there was Jacob. Jacob was a little unique. He had a very different experience. He was kind of like one of the other kids I described in the previous episode, who just sometimes the dots didn't always connect. And one of the things that Jacob could do, Jacob could cry on cue and then stop. So you never knew when he was serious or when he was joking around. And it was crazy because his mom played no games. Like Jacob and his brother Josh, they were both Salvadoran, and their mama played no games. She used to just make sound effects and they would straighten up. She'd be like, and then they would stand up and stand. I'm like, dang, she got this like some drill sergeant stuff. Kind of like, remember in The Sound of Music when the dad used to blow the whistle and then the kids would come out and march and stand in order? Okay, got Joe Jackson beat, okay? Like they no games. And so, those are some of the new kids. But man, that first week, it was the longest day because we had never been used to really just having kids for 8 hours straight. We normally have them for about 4.5 because, we had so much time in the beginning to prep and do other things. But man, we had to be so creative. I mean, we were making bird feeders. We were trying to find ways, anything I could think of, because again, we're trying to also save money and make things work. We were making up games. I mean, I had a challenge where they had to make boats with popsicle sticks, and whoever's boat could float the longest and not fall apart because, the glue would start melting, that would win. I used to make these really, really long scavenger hunts in the neighborhood, like scavenger hunts that was going to take 2 hours to get done. And somehow they'd finish it in 10 minutes. I'm like, dang, man, this was supposed to take 2 hours. And so we did everything. And there's a website called Worksheet Works that we used to use. Like, we used to use this website, Worksheet Works, Apples for the Teacher, and a few other ones. But Worksheet Works was a great website because you could make worksheets. And I used to make these very extensive word searches where I'd make a word search and I'd put the name of every kid in the word search and then a few other things. So it'd be like 60 names. I'd try to put as much in there so when they would start, it would take all day. The winner gets a prize. We were doing math challenges, drills, everything you could think of. We made all kind of games, everything you could think of, because we had to keep the kids entertained for 8 hours. We made up games, just stuff that didn't even make sense. We would find a way to do it sometimes. Just anything you could think of. Cleanup day. All right, everybody, here's a bag. Let's go clean up the neighborhood. All right, are we going? Here we go. And so we loved field trip days because field trip days meant that you didn't have to entertain for 8 hours. So, we couldn't wait to get on the bus and go somewhere. I didn't like driving, but, couldn't wait to go somewhere. Pool days weren't too bad, but pool days had me too nervous because you really got to keep an eye on kids because I can't have nobody drowning or anything like that. And so it doesn't help that all the kids think they're the Avengers, so they want to flip and do all kind of stuff. I'm like, I need y'all to calm down. I just need you to swim nicely in the water. Just swim nicely. If you can't swim, wade and walk. Like, man. And so, man, let me tell you about the first day, though. The first day was crazy because we kept waiting and the food wasn't there because, we had this food vendor and we're waiting for the food to get there. Finally, I went ahead and ordered some pizza because at this point it's 12 o'clock. The kids ain't had no breakfast. It's lunchtime. I ordered pizza, paid out of pocket because, again, I don't have a company card yet. That would change in due time. And so, the Domino's is right like next door. So they bring the Domino's. We pass the Domino's out. Finally, our actual food vendor shows up with the food. We were under the impression that the food would be cooked. Oh no. They come and they bring us a box full of the food that we would have for a week. And for that day, they were supposed to have sloppy joes for lunch. Do you want to know what the sloppy joes were? Frozen ground turkey and buns and barbecue sauce. And then they had the nerve to write on the list for the directions, have fun. So they give you this food. They didn't tell you how to cook any of it. But, listen, I knew how to cook. Ava knew how to cook. That was fine. We just didn't realize we'd be cooking every day. So every day we ended up having to cook breakfast and lunch, which was absolutely crazy. But I feel like the kids got the best food they had ever gotten because, we made the food with love. There was seasoning. We were getting it in, okay? It was to the point where I was bringing stuff from home just to prepare to cook. Ava was bringing stuff to prepare. We were bringing our special spatulas and special pots and everything. And, because they pretty much just gave us bare food. Here's some potatoes and here's some hot dogs. Do something. So, okay, I'm in here slicing and dicing the potatoes and massaging the potatoes in olive oil and putting the seasonings, and then you cook it in a little bit of water with the seasoning and everything to soften it up, and then you fry it in it. Like, we were getting it in. So them kids were eating really, really well during that summer camp. They got some good meal. Spaghetti, chicken and hot dogs, burgers. They got some real food. Like, the only thing that sucked is you had to make it, but since we were making it, they were like getting real food. And it became an issue because the kids would want seconds, but we never had enough. So me being the creative person I was. Okay, well, if y'all want seconds, you got to answer some trivia. Whoever gets these questions right gets the next piece of chicken. That sounds so stereotypical, but it would be intense too. I mean, kids would be crying at the end of this trivia if they didn't win. I'm like, man, this thing is wild. And so the only thing I hated about having the food vendor is they always had this inspector that would come and do weekly site visits with her little clipboard and come in there and check. And she'd always show up when she wasn't supposed to show up. She had a certain day she was supposed to come. She'd always come just before we're getting ready to go to the pool. The kids are already in the swim clothes, ready to load up on the bus, and here she comes with the clipboard. Dang it. Okay, well, we can't go till she does this. And at the time, we only had 1 hour at the pool because we had to find a free pool. We didn't have money to pay for a pool, so we only had 1 hour at the pool. And I mean, as soon as it was like 58 minutes, that lady be like, all right, it's time to wind down. I'm like, dang, man, you can't even let the kids get like 3 extra minutes in. And so the lady would come with this clipboard and move so slow. Okay, so can I see your workbook? Yeah, here, it's right here. Okay, you got Monday? Yeah, it's right here. Do you have two? Yeah. As a matter of fact, if you just keep turning the pages, Wednesday's gonna be there, Thursday's gonna be there, Friday's gonna be there. Okay, and you have the next week? Yes, just turn the page again and go to the next week. And so she'd do that. She'd go through the clips and then she'd walk into the kitchen. These seasonings that came with the thing? No, y'all didn't give us any seasoning, and so we just added some seasoning just to kind of make the food a bit more edible because, kale is not really great by itself when it's cooked. You're going to need some butter, some oil, something to go with it. Okay, well, that's not quite a part of our program. We have a very specific, order of how things have to be prepared. So any extra seasonings, sauces, creams, condiments that we did not already provide, you can't give them. Oh, right, like the sloppy joes that would have been made with barbecue sauce and ground turkey meat. Right, yeah, like that. And she didn't even realize I was being sarcastic. But anyway, she would take forever, and so she'd write all these notes and walk out of there like everything was good, and then we get the report back and it's like violation number 1, violation number 2, violation. I'm like, you and these dang violations. I was so sick of them. I'll deal with them later. There's some stories about them later down the line in another episode. And so, man, she used to kill me with that clipboard. But like I said, the kids loved our cooking. Let me tell you how crazy it was. And then there was JJ. Remember, JJ is Will's little brother. JJ was greedy as well, and I never liked eating in front of kids. Now, like I said, the kids ate well because we were cooking and giving them the good stuff. They ate real good with us, but I still always brought my own food, or sometimes, I'd get Popeyes or something. But one day I had cooked at home and I brought my food, like I brought my leftovers for lunch. Made some bomb little shrimp and everything. And so I'm trying to eat my little shrimp quietly in the kitchen, just away from everybody. I got like 20 minutes of me time in the kitchen. The kids are in the big room watching a movie. Cool. Here comes JJ. Mr. Michael, I want the shrimp too. JJ, you guys, I don't have shrimp for you. You guys have chicken nuggets and french fries today. I want what you have. That's nice, but this is Mr. Michael's. Mr. Michael, I made this up, but I just want to try. No, you're not going to be able to have some because if I give some to you, I have to give some to everybody. JJ just walked up and took the piece out my hand, took the shrimp and ate it. JJ, I just wanted to try. Mind you, he's chewing it while he's talking. I just wanted to try. JJ, go in there and sit down. Like, JJ was just greedy between him and Otis. I don't know who was greedier, but it was funny. And then Damon, remember the kid that I said that was really, really smart that used to wear the penny loafers? One time the kids just had some sandwiches in there. He couldn't wait. He was starving. And so we had done all these activities, and we were going to do, lunch right after. I go in the kitchen, get ready to pass out the plates, and Damon's walking out the kitchen. Damon, what are you doing in the kitchen? Nothing. I go in the kitchen. We're getting ready to pass these sandwiches out. Here's a sandwich with a big old bite taken out of the side. Damon, come back in here. Come here. Is this you? Damon, open your mouth. Let me look at the back of your teeth. And the back of his teeth had all that peanut butter and jelly. And I'm like, you know what? This is going to be go ahead and take your sandwich. Go. Just go on. Go. Kids were always doing something. But, the cool thing is we also used the summer to get the kids excited about learning. We didn't just do fun things. Like, we try to keep things very, very educational as well. So we had came up with all these different curriculums for the kids, and it was based on their age group. And so we were able to keep the kids in a space where they were learning all kind of things. And so what we tried to do is we looked at what the kids would be learning in the next year, and we started teaching it to them early, like depending on their grades. So if they were going to be learning multiplication in the next school year, they were already learning their times tables up through 12. In history and stuff, they were already learning their states. They were already learning, liquid, solid, gas. Like, they were learning all these different things. We had all kind of activities, and we had put the kids on like 2 big giant teams. And so, everything was competitive. We just wanted it to be fun because, again, if I'm going to be there for 8 hours every day, forever, I got to have fun too. I don't want to be bored. And so, we had a whole lot going on. And then I got this call, and it was like, hey, I need you to adjust your schedule because you're going to take your kids to go and see, well, now they're the Commanders, but, they were the Washington football team before that. They had the name that everybody didn't like. And so, they're like, yeah, you're going to get to meet them. You're going to go to Ashburn, Virginia, and you get to go watch them practice. Oh, cool. So I done told the kids, hey, we're about to go see the Commanders tomorrow. I didn't say Commanders because it wasn't them yet, but just put 2 and 2 together. And so the kids are like, yeah, because, okay, NFL players. Dope. We ride all the way to Ashburn, Virginia. That ride was like 1 hour and 40 minutes on that little bus because, them little buses was struggling to get it through on the freeway. And it was just a coincidence. My friend Whitney just happened to randomly be there. I'm like, what are you doing out here? But at the time, she was dating somebody that was working with the team. And so she just so happened to be out there. Long story short, they gave us the wrong day to come. Our day was supposed to be the next day, not that day. And so what was supposed to happen was we were supposed to get to the practice field. They'd get to meet all the football players. They'd get to go into all the cool locker rooms and get some cool gadgets and cool gear and all kind of stuff. And it was just going to be a whole thing and big, blow up machines, and the kids get balloons and sodas and slushies. It was going to be a great day. None of that was there. And so I get there, and they're like, sir, you weren't supposed to be here until, on this day. And I'm like, no, this is what I was told. I'm looking at the emails right now. And I'm like, oh, well, they gave you the wrong information. And I'm like, well, is there anything we can do? Because we just drove 1 hour and 40 minutes. Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, there's not really a lot we can do. I mean, you guys can stand over here and watch from here. Now, their definition of stand over here and watch from here was like being like 700 feet away where you couldn't see anything. And then, oddly enough, Wale the rapper just happened to be out there as well. And so all the kids are like screaming Wale's name. Wale wouldn't even come over. It was the worst field trip ever. And it was so funny because I'm standing there talking to Whitney because I'm like, well, maybe Whitney can make some magic happen because, this is her boyfriend and stuff. They can make something. So she's trying to, make some magic happen, pull some strings. We get a little bit of luck where now we're allowed to stand in a tent that's a little bit closer and watch from there. So now we're 400 feet away. Here comes Clarissa. This is what we came for? Clarissa, little girl, mind you, this is the same girl that said that Charity wasn't cute or wasn't attractive. I don't even know where that came from, but it was in her spirit to say, this is what we came for. Clarissa, and I'm already thinking about this 1 hour and 40 minute ride back to the center we're gonna have to do, and the kids, there's not even any lunch for the kids here. I'm like, man, that was a stupid field trip, such a stupid day. And I remember another field trip. We went to the Air and Space Museum, and that was the day Kamari just wanted to show out. Anytime we went on a field trip, most of the field trips, Ava wasn't on because normally the field trips were on, I think, on like a Wednesday or a Friday. Ava was normally with me on the pool days. So normally it was either Carrie who was with me or sometimes it was Jones. Jones was this other guy that worked at the basement location, but Jones didn't do anything. Jones was cool, but Jones was sorry because Jones, when he came to the center, he would just sit and watch football clips on the computer all day. He'd sit in one spot and not move. And I'm like, how do you have a job? Why is it that I feel like me and Ava are working the hardest in this organization? Because ain't nobody doing nothing. Sometimes Alex would come. Alex was cool. Alex was hands-on. Like he was gonna get it in. So it was either Carrie or it was Alex. Sometimes Jones. But man, so we're on this field trip, and on that day, Kamari decided he was just gonna show out. Kamari was one of the kids that was new for the summer. Just show out to the point where I was like, you know what? You and I, we just gonna sit on the bus. We just gonna sit on the bus because I don't have it in me to keep fussing at you and keep you with my group, because normally I always had all the kids that, again, needed something to do. I always had all the kids in my group that needed something to do. And so I had Kamari, I had Jacob. Remember, Jacob is the one where the dots weren't always connecting and he could cry on cue as well. So Jacob was having his moment. Who else did I have in my group? I had Otis was in my group that day. And some other kids, just all the kids that just do too much. And so I'm like, y'all, work with me. And so it got to the point where I was like, all right, the other three were doing okay, but for some reason, Kamara was doing too much. I'm like, you and I, we just gonna sit on the bus. We sat on the bus, we just sat and listened to the radio for about 3 hours. I had it on Magic 102.3. It's playing all the grandparent, old people music, and we just sat there. And I was like, listen, I just want you to chill. Just enjoy the sound of music. Just sit and enjoy the silence. Just look out the windows and just watch the trees blow in the wind. Enjoy, because you ain't going back inside. All right, you with me for the rest of the day. And so it was a lot. And then I remember one time, this was a day where Ava was with us. We went on a nature hike. So there was this great nature trail not too far from the center. And inside of their visitor center, they had this room with like snakes and stuff in it. And so all Stacy heard was that there were snakes. We didn't even go in the visitor center. We were just walking, and one of the kids was like, yeah, we went here on a field trip. They have snakes in the room over there. And Stacy heard snakes, flipped out, screamed, hollered, cried. She couldn't walk anymore. She had to get on Ava's back. And I'm like, Stacy, the snakes are inside the visitor center. We're not even at the visitor center. We're on the water right now. Look at the animals. Look at the birds flying. You don't see the swan or the crane, whatever this is. Like, what is the problem? I mean, Stacy, I don't want to go. I'm ready to go home. Well, we ain't going home because we done came out here. We gonna walk this trail because once you start the trail, you have to finish it. There's no going back. You got to finish it to get back to where you're going. It was to the point where when we got to the end of the trail and everybody needed to use the bathroom was at the visitor center. She was not gonna go. Ava had to literally have the girl ride on her back. And mind you, there were no live snakes. It was like snake skin inside of a display. And they put the snake that has died inside of the jar with the liquid, and it's on a shelf somewhere. That was the snake. I was so irritated. I'm like, Stacy, never again. Anytime we do anything outside, you just stay home that day, because we're not about to do this every single time, because you out here screaming at butterflies. But Stacy is funny. She's a senior in high school now. I'm really happy for her. She just got into Townsend, so good for her. Anyway, and so yeah, the kids, summer camp was a lot. They drove us crazy. Even the CITs were on one. All right, so some of the CITs are like our teenage volunteers that year. We had Erica, who was the girl I said was the teenager that had kind of seen a whole lot, and I used to worry about her. So Erica was one of the CITs. Regina was one of the CITs. Terrellyn was one. Terrellyn is that girl that had all the attitude. She was the very first kid I ever met at the center. That's the one who would ask me if I was even gonna be there, and if not, I could just leave right then. She had the blue braids at the time, and she was one of the the CITs. And I think we also had Renee as like a substitute to fill in when she could. So those were the four. And one day, the four of them decided they were gonna get high. I mean, they lit it up. Came to work, eyes bloodshot red. Everybody's just giddy and laughing. I'm like, Ava, I think they're high. And Ava took them in that room and was like, are y'all high? And they all busted out laughing. I'm like, you know what? All y'all go home. Go. Ava's like, just all y'all. Ava was ready to fire everybody. I'm like, no, we don't got to fire. Look, this is what me and Ava used to differ. I was always trying to see the good in everything. Well, we don't got to fire them, because I would have probably done the same thing at the time. Like, Ava used to get so mad at me because she'd be ready to throw the hammer. And here I go, well, they're kids. They're gonna do things that kids do. We have to let them make their own mistakes. So sometimes we would butt heads, but she was hot that day, and she had a point, because she's like, you are responsible for, the livelihood of other children. And when you signed on to be a volunteer in this role, you pretty much operate as a staff member. And in any moment where you drop the ball, you are, the entire organization is responsible for our failures. And so when you guys mess up, it comes to us, which eventually goes to the organization. So Ava was absolutely right. But yeah, we sent them home for the day. It was like, if y'all ever do that crap again, like, we really should just fire y'all. But we needed them at that moment, because we just didn't have enough support. And they were actually really good kids. They just, for some reason, decided they wanted to experiment. And, that's things that kids do. And I will say all three of them amounted to be really well off. Anyway, with that being said, the one thing that really just drove me crazy as I close this out is one of those days we used to go and have our park day. And on that specific day, our park day was Dyke Marsh, which is this area right by the Potomac River. This nice area where you can feed the ducks and stuff. And, we would take all of our games and do like dodgeball and stuff outside. And so it was a nice area. That day, it was me and Carrie. Now, like I said, Carrie was Boss Lady's assistant. Carrie is the, one of the first people I met in the company. Real cool, right? And so, the kids are having a good time. We've had our lunch. We've eaten outside. Just a nice, whimsical day. And then, out of nowhere, I hear Avery just yell, bear. I'm like, what? And I'm like, ain't no bears over here. And I'm bear. And I look to my right. It's a deer, and it's mama deer, and baby deer, and another baby deer. Avery gets up with his stick that he's picked up, because mind you, this whole area outside of at Dyke Marsh, it's like this area that's on the water. There's grass, there's trees. It's kind of a nature trail. People like to take their dogs out there and run. And if you go further down, you get close to like Ronald Reagan Airport, and people like to lay over there and watch the planes fly over and stuff, because the planes are landing right by it. And so, there's a whole lot going on over there. And across on the other side is this big giant parkway. Okay, it's the Fairfax County Parkway, just cars. Shoom, 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 shoom. Like all of that's over there. And so Avery gets up, runs with this stick towards the deer. The kids all get up and run behind Avery. And mind you, the deer are running toward the parkway. And I'm like, what? Whoa. And so I'm trying to call all the kids back, and it's like, I'm not trying to sound stereotypical, but you see these 3 deer running. You look behind the deer. You see all these black kids with sticks running, chasing after them. It's like, what in the hell is going on out there? And so eventually, the deer runs off to some side, and the kids just eventually get tired. They don't have enough energy to make it all the way over there. I'm like, all of y'all, get over here now. Now, here's one thing. I was never one to yell, okay? I've always said this. I never liked to yell at kids, because when I was a kid, we thought it was funny when the adults would lose their composure. That's why I enjoyed watching Ellen lose it when she was doing a cooking class. It was always funny to me when adults could not keep their composure because kids took them to that level. And so I never liked to yell, but in that moment, I needed them to hear me because they were so far off in the distance. And so all of the kids come back. I got them all gathered in a circle. I'm hot. Pissed, because I'm just thinking of all the things that could have gone wrong, right? And so I'm about to chew out each and every one of these kids. I mean, every field trip was going to be canceled from that next moment, and we just going to go home. The whole camp is just going to be closed when we get home. I'm ready. And Carrie's like, no, Michael, I got this. I want you to relax. I got this. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm walking, and I'm relieved that nobody's gotten hurt or nothing. And so out of nowhere, I just know Carrie, she gonna handle it, because now mind you, Carrie's a white girl, so I'm like, okay, she understands what I'm thinking. So I'm like, she got it. Carrie goes, deer are living creatures, huh? And this is their habitat, huh? We must respect their home. What the no, but because I'm like, that is not what I'm thinking about. Like, I'm thinking of all the things that could have gone wrong. Thing 1, the deer could have run onto the parkway and caused like a 50-car pileup, and people could have died and cars could have blown up. I'm thinking of that. 2, the deer could have bucked and turned around and came and injured and stumped out the kids. Like, listen, deer are all nice and nimble, but deer can fight. Like, you ever seen that clip where there was the baby, fawn that was laying by the car, and the kitten was looking at it and climbing all over it, and then the kitten left, and then the dog, it was like a golden retriever, came, was kind of just sniffing the deer, and then mama deer came out of nowhere and beat the dog up, like stumped the deer out, cracked the dog's ribs. Okay, don't mess with these big giant animals. So I'm thinking like that could have happened. I'm thinking, anything could have happened. A random stranger could have came and snatched one of the kids. One of the kids could have ran on the parkway and got hit by a car. Like, I'm thinking of all of those things. Carrie, who I forgot is like tree hugger, vegan, doesn't eat meat because she respects the animals, which I respect, and all that kind of stuff. I forgot that was the plane she was on. That was like argument number 13 on my list of things to cuss them kids out about. So when she started with that one, I'm like, Carrie, everybody just get on the bus. Get on the bus. Let's just go. Everybody get on the bus. And so it was so funny. She and I laugh about that all the time. And then the worst part, the kids were in club shirts. So if we would have got ran over by the cars at the parkway, or if anything would have happened where the news would have had to come, everybody would have known who we were and where we were from, because our shirts had like the name of the center on it. I was too done. Like, there was just so much. Like, the deer could have been killed getting hit by the car. A kid could have been killed. Just so many different things. And I was like, don't y'all ever in your life. What's wrong with y'all? Man. So anyway, we're on the way back. I'm pissed. Livid. Salty. I cuss all these kids. Oh, y'all lucky y'all are kids. If I could just okay, let me remind myself. I'm doing this for the kids. I'd have to tell that to myself all the time. So anyway, we're finally on the way back. And so, Carrie is driving one bus, I'm driving the other bus, and I'm driving. I'm like, let's just get home. I've told the kids I don't want to hear no talking. Everybody just be quiet. Just sit. since y'all want to be followers, we gonna follow the leader today. And the leader is Mr. Michael, and nobody is talking. Just ride. So I got the radio on. This time I got it on 96.3 WHUR. You know, they play the nice adult contemporary R&B music. I need something to calm my nerves. You know, they're going to play the Sade and Anita Baker and the Teddy Pendergrass and the Al Green. Stuff to bring my nerves down. Because normally, you know, when we ride on the bus, I put it on the fun station. And at the time, that damn Nicki Minaj, Starships and all that was out. And, or maybe it was Super Bass. Kids loved all that. You know, they would sing those songs to the top of their lungs and they have a great time. But they ain't going to be no singing along today. Nothing. No party rocking, no Katy Perry, no Rihanna, no Nicki, no Big Sean, no any of that. Tonight, this afternoon on the bus, we're listening to Frida Payne, Band of Gold. Voices off. So anyway, we're driving, and out of nowhere, for some reason, there is this bird that's flying, and I don't know what kind of bird it was. It wasn't a really, really big one, but it was like one of those smaller birds, but it wasn't one of the regular ones. It wasn't a cardinal, it wasn't a robin, it wasn't whatever those little brown ones are that are everywhere. I don't know what it was. I hope it wasn't a blue jay, because I think it really might have been one. I'm driving the bus. I don't know what was going on with the blue jay. He was just flying too low, and I couldn't slow down, and somehow he ended up on the windshield. Oh, God, it was so bad. It was so bad. I'm just driving. You just hear, and all the kids scream. I scream, because, mind you, I'm not even screaming that something hit the wind. I'm screaming that I know the bird is no longer living. I was like, oh, God, because listen, I, too, am one step from a tree hugger. I love animals, okay? I can sit and watch Animal Planet all day and be content. I love animals. I would love to have a dog, but I just don't live a lifestyle that allows me to take care of one because I'm too busy, I'm not home enough, and I don't think it's fair for a big giant dog to live in an apartment. And so I am the biggest animal lover, and it broke my heart to know that I had killed a bird, because I was just driving. You literally saw it hit the windshield and fall off to the side. I'm like, dang, man. And I wasn't going that fast. I was only going like 45. And so, it killed me. But my CITs were on the bus. And so Erica and Terrellyn, they were in the back seat just dying. All right, Regina didn't think it was funny, because remember, Regina is the one who also got the pet cockatoo, so she understands my pain. But them other two are in there dying. They think that crap is so funny because they just know I'm shook. Like that messed me up, and so they trolled me for the rest of the summer. When I tell you I would be going home, one time I think Erica had cut out a bird. Like, she drew a bird and cut it out and put it on my windshield. And it was like, how does it feel knowing you took out a bird? I'm like, you are some of the worst children I have ever worked with. Man, but that summer was a long summer. We were so happy when that summer was over. I had never worked so hard in my life. Like, man, we get off every day at 5 o'clock and go home and be asleep. You just go to bed that day. Like, it was a lot. But that pretty much would be the first school year, and it was a learning experience. So much had changed, and there was so much to just, discover in that 1 year, because when I looked at where my life was just a year earlier, I was unemployed. And here we are now, a year later. I've relocated. I'm living in like the DC metropolitan area, and I'm the director of this community center, and the community center is finally getting to where I need it to be. Because I'll be honest, the first year and the second year they were pretty rough years. They weren't the best. We still had a lot of fun, but there was a lot of learning. There was a lot of trial and error. There were a lot of things that I did wrong. There would be a lot of things I would still continue to do wrong. Again, we never had any money. Boss lady was cuckoo. Big boss man did not like me. Nobody knew who we were in the organization. The CEO kind of knew my name. I wasn't making any money. I'm living, when I say check to check, that was a real check to check. It was like check to check to the point where I need to go ahead and map out what's coming in the next check that's not here yet because I'm in the hole. And, hey, Mom, you think I can get like $60? That kind of stuff. I was down bad. So it was an experience. But what I loved is, when I look back at when I first got there, I didn't know if it was gonna be the right fit for me. I just saw all of these red flags, and hey, I was like, well, I'm down for the ride. Let's try it out. And I'm glad I stayed because, I ended up really getting an opportunity to bond and grow with all of these different families that I worked with. And like I said, these kids are amazing. And, this was only year one. Remember, I was there for 11 years, so I got stories for days. But it's fun to look back. Sometimes I look at all the pictures and I'm like, dang, we came a long way. Because listen, When I started at this center, like I said, it wasn't even a chartered site. It was the center nobody knew of. It was run down, it was raggedy, it was old, it was dirty. And by the time I, eventually left because I had a new job, it was, it had been the number one center in the organization for 3 separate calendar years, 2017, 2018, and 2021. And no other center has ever had that accolade. There were so many great things, and I'll get to those later, but, it was definitely a learning experience. So by the time we finished summer camp, I was proud that I had made it through the first year, but I'm not gonna lie, I was so happy to have that week off before school started right back up. Me and my friends, Tanae, Whitney, because Tanae was in town, a few other folks, we were like, let's do a beach trip. And I remember we went to Virginia Beach for that weekend. That honestly should be a podcast story in itself. But the first year was a lot, but I met some really great families, some great people, and it was a great stepping stone, and there are so many more stories to tell. So the next time you hear from me, we will be talking about the second and third year working at the center, because if you thought these stories were something, these were like the Sesame Street stories. It only gets more intense. Anyway, I'm out. Until next time.